This meeting will now come to order, and I will read the EPSB mission statement. The Education Professional Standards Board, in full collaboration and cooperation with its education partners, promotes high levels of student achievement by establishing and enforcing rigorous professional standards for preparation, certification, and responsible and ethical behavior of all professional educators in Kentucky. Serving as board secretary is Sharon Chesser. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Amanda Ellis.
Present.
Susan Reber. Diane Berry.
Present.
James Cousins. Elijah Edwards. CJ Fryer. Kathy Gunn.
Present.
Priscilla Keller.
Present.
Amy Lingo.
Present.
Jacqueline Mayfield.
Present.
Corinne Murphy.
Present.
Meredith Pittman.
Present.
Lisa Rosinski.
Present.
Amber Snell.
Present.
Vice Chair Weedman. Chair Mitchell.
Present.
We have quorum.
Thank you so much. Interim Commissioner Robin Kinney joins us as Executive Secretary of EPSB. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me here with you today. It's always a pleasure to see you. A lot of things to update you on in the world of P-12 education here at the Department of Education. It's been very, very busy right now. Probably the things that is looming over all of us is the legislative session, and I'm going to save that for Brian. So Brian's going to tell you all about the legislative session. But there have been a lot of things going on. Two important things just to update you at the very top, which is our commissioner search. Just as a reminder, we are looking for the next great commissioner of the Department of Education and have our application processes out right now. That's getting ready to close. This week on the 16th is the application deadline. And then we'll move into a period of where we're conducting the first interviews after vetting, and then second round of interviews toward the middle of March. Remember, our goal is to have the ideal candidate selected by the week of March 25th, so that we can then recommend that candidate to the General Assembly, to the Senate, for confirmation. So we are about to hit a very, very busy time here at the department looking for that for our next commissioner. The other thing that I thought may be of interest, we are also in the process of looking for our next principal for the Kentucky School for the Deaf. And that is currently posted. No, I'm sorry, it closed last week. So I'll be getting a briefing from the Kentucky School for the Deaf staff. The Office of Special Ed and Early Learning. They'll be updating me on where we see as far as our candidate pool and moving forward with that process as well. So two very important positions here at the department that we're looking for. The other thing that I wanted to just briefly update you is something that I'm seeing move in a very, very positive manner, and that's the Commonwealth Education Continuum. And I'm looking at Amanda. She may update further, but it's really exciting to see the priorities that have been selected for the continuum. You know, sometimes it's about getting the right people in the right place at the right time. And I think that the stakeholders of the continuum are really those people right now with authority to make decisions and authority to move things forward. All of the priorities, the 4 priorities selected, impact teachers. And so I really feel like that we're working together, and I'm not going to steal the thunder on the continuum because Amanda likely has that on her report, but I am very, very encouraged and appreciate the members of EPSB, Dean Murphy on there and Justin as well. Diane Woods from the Kentucky Board of Education sits on the continuum. And we have several staff people that are actually on there. So Amanda's busy getting us into work groups as we can move those priorities forward. We did have a Kentucky Board of Education meeting last week, and the highlight was career and technical education. Yay, you can say woo. We had a great time. This is Career and Technical Education Month, and we had about 12-ish districts that came and joined us for a CTE showcase. And they brought all their students here, and we got to invite all the people from the Kentucky Department of Education that could go down and see their work. Really encouraging, vibrant learning experiences. I saw everything from equine studies to medical career studies, aviation. It was just fascinating. all these kids could look you straight in the eye, talk to you about what was important to them and how they were moving forward in their educational process. So it was a great day here. And we got some great food because they do culinary studies too. So they actually, we had a group that brought us, treated us to lunch. Another really fun event for me this past week was National Board Certified Teachers recognition. And to see all those proud individuals coming up and getting pinned. We have 671 national board candidates at this time, but we were honoring the 103 newly certified national board certified teachers and 253 that were maintaining their certification. You know, Kentucky has always been a national leader in national board certification, and we are now up to 4,385 national board certified teachers, and they are to be congratulated and commended. They work very, very hard. And, you know, as I sat there and thought, they did this on purpose. Like this was, they wanted to do this. They were motivated to do this. And so we had a great time recognizing them. Lieutenant Governor Coleman was there to give remarks, and a lot of support from Kentucky State University, who was the host for our event. And they're getting ready to do some big things, I think, in Ed Prep too. So we look forward to seeing that. And then finally, I just want to say a thank you to Justin and Amber. They attended the chamber dinner alongside Kentucky Board of Education representatives. So we had our Vice Chair Lou Young there, and several of us went, but we stayed and we talked to legislators about the importance of P-12 education. Very specifically, Amber and Justin were advocating on behalf of teachers and the K-TIP program and things that we find really important to support our teachers each and every day. So I want to thank them. It was kind of a late evening, and they both went back and taught the next morning. And I was out the next day actually recognizing some classified staff, where we picked 2 classified staff from Kentucky as sort of like the classified staff of the year. But in my travels, the whole time I was driving, I was like, they are teaching. They are teaching right now, because it was kind of a late evening. And thank you to Cassie and Byron, who are also there with us as well. That kind of concludes my remarks for this morning, but I'd be happy to take any questions, or we can just move right along to the next item on the agenda.
Any questions? All right.
Okay. I think our next item is the report from the Council on Post-Secondary Education, so I'll turn it over to Amanda Ellis.
Great. Thank you, Robin. You queued it up beautifully. And
Amanda, I don't know whether to interrupt you or not, but I think there was a legislative update that we were going to get. Are we going to get that later? Or are we
We
going
are.
to get that?
yes.
Okay, great.
Next.
No, you
Just didn't want to miss that part.
we don't want you to miss it.
So, okay, sorry to interrupt. There we go.
No, do not apologize. It is a busy season, and I look forward to Brian's report as well, because it's changing every day. So great question. No, just as a huge thank you to Robin. She has, I've worked with Robin for a long time, but to be the interim commissioner during a very busy session and a budget year, and to attend all of these things, I appreciate you more than you know. And the collaboration is very real. It's very alive. So I will start actually with the continuum. I did have that on my agenda. We met a couple of weeks ago, and we do have Dean Murphy and we have Justin Mitchell on our council or our continuum. We're so grateful for that. But we were digging into what we wanted to prioritize. And so I get the honor of coordinating, I say really herding cats who are really too busy to do any more, but they do more. And we come together collaboratively to look at the P20 continuum into the workforce. What do we do together? So yes, we have needs in every piece of the pipeline, but how do we work together? And so we have worked really hard over the past 3 years, starting our 4th year, which is really hard to believe, of a willing body to come together. And the 4 priorities that the continuum members chose, I had nothing to do with it, I just coordinated, is they are very passionate about the K-12 workforce. And these are folks that represent students, parents, teachers, administrators, counselors, advisors, post-secondary faculty, presidents, the chamber, our workforce. I can go on. And they identified the K-12 workforce as an ongoing priority. So I'll be tapping into the folks, especially on this board, to really talk about what does that look like? What do the outcomes look like? I'm encouraged, though, they still want to focus really heavily on affordability. And for families and students to know earlier what opportunities are out there. Kentucky offers and invests so much financial support, but if you don't know about it, it's not supportive, or if you find out too late. And so a lot of the parents had, or members who are also parents, raised the concern around just how do we better communicate collectively together. Kia does a great job. They have 30 folks on the ground, but they can't do it all. And if we silo ourselves, we can't do it all, but together we can do more. They also continued focus on advising and instructing in career exploration earlier, and what options we provide to students and to families. How do we talk to our students about this earlier and really have a more aligned effort? And then the other priority that they chose is that it was presented to possibly align the work that KDE and all the stakeholders have done with Kentucky United We Learn with Profile of a Learner with the CPE graduate profile that the higher ed folks are working on, that aligns to the 10 essential skills that the chamber have identified with workforce. And it goes on and on. There's so much overlap of competencies and dispositions and knowledge and skills that we really want to see our students exhibit in addition to academic readiness. So it's not one or the other, but it's this package deal of how do we best equip our students and throughout the pipeline. And if you really look at it, preschool really starts this work much earlier. And kindergarten, they start this work. And so really talking about coming together to have more of an alignment of what does that look like for a student who goes through our system in Kentucky from the very beginning stages until they enter the workforce. And so those conversations are going on. So it's just a really cool dynamic right now. We are pulling together the work groups, as Robin said, getting feedback from our members on suggested participants and what our focus should be in our outcomes and our timelines. So stay tuned, but it's great work happening, and I'm always in awe of participation and commitment to this work. It's very inspiring. Just a few things to bring to your attention from CPE. We are really, really busy too with the session, and I'll let Brian share all that information, but we are hopping and skipping every day, it feels like. But in addition to that, we're really pleased to share that you may or may not have seen, but the National Student Clearinghouse recently just shared their national data on enrollment gains, and they reported Kentucky is the highest fall to fall total enrollment gain in the nation this year. And that is because of a lot of people working really, really hard to not just recruit, but support students, support their families, support the staff at different high schools, and then working together to really make those things possible. The financial support, it's taking a lot of hands on deck to do that. And so we are really pleased with that. We saw a 5.6% increase of overall enrollment growth during that period, during that fall to fall. So congratulations really to Kentucky as a whole, especially our higher ed folks who have recruited and been supportive, and those in the secondary world who have helped get them to that piece. So yay, that's a great thing. We are also, right now, we have a North Star that we look at 60% of working Kentucky adults with a credential or degree, so they can go for a sustainable wage and have work and be credentialed. We are at 55%. So we're well on our way. We have more work to do, but there's goals to be set and to be met, and we're moving in that direction. We're so grateful. And then the last quick thing is that we are hosting on February 26th to the 27th at WKU. It is our Student Success Summit. That is led by our Student Success Collaborative, and they focus in on gateway courses, transition, student basic needs. So there's lots of things really geared at campus folks to help look at the whole student and supports around that. And I can tell you the campuses are working so hard to really meet the needs of students and to meet them where they are, and to continue to provide excellent support and care, not only through enrollment, but sustainable for completion. And so the Student Success Collaborative, I think this is their second or third convening that they've done. It's always really well attended and very relevant to their work. So I will stop there and I will turn it back to you to move on to the agenda.
I think it's me.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. I appreciate yours and interim commissioner's update as well. You stole some of my thunder though, so.
Oh, I'm sorry.
See, that's what happens when you're down the list. You're going to get bumped up. So, Ms. Mayfield, I'm trying. I had some slides that I was just going to give you a visual, but even though I'm in this room, it says that it's the spinning wheel, so I'm not showing up. So technology just doesn't cooperate sometimes.
Right, I
so we're
understand.
having the same thing. So I'm just going to roll with it, and we'll unfortunately have to forego the visuals. But most importantly, want to say thank you all for your continued commitment, your dedication to this board, and the time that you really don't have, but continue to provide to support our educators and most importantly our students. Also, thank you to Ms. Snell and Chair Mitchell for their time last Thursday evening in joining us. Most appreciated, as well as Ms. Trueblood as well. And then definitely due credit to Ms. Sharon Chesser for getting us prepared, and for Cassie Trueblood for all the efforts to get this meeting underway, as always. And then the staff on the roll behind me also have dedicated their time to preparing materials for the meeting as well. So just wanted to make sure I'm giving due credit to the wonderful people that make this happen. I do want to piggyback a little bit on the highlight of the MBCT ceremony that took place last week. It's a wonderful facility out near Lawrenceburg for KSU. It was a building I had not been in, and it is quite impressive, the facility that they have. So it was just a wonderful place to have the 103 new individuals celebrating this accomplishment, plus several that were renewing. I think it's been well recognized for quite some time that, achieving national board certification is quite a penultimate event from the classroom perspective, and it is still one thing that I do believe Kentucky is doing very well, and we are certainly well represented with the numbers that continue to renew as well as achieve new certification. And thankfully, there continues to also be financial support as well to add to, not only are we growing professionally, but it is an economic help, to say the least. We should also, as we get toward the summer, be able to provide and ask our national board partners to update us on the early entry grant that Kentucky has been involved in, that has been working with candidates in years 1 through 3 over the last year and a half. And as that progresses, we'll ask them to give us an update on how that pilot program has been going as well. So exciting news in national board. Jocelyn Waddle from Division of Educator Recruitment and Development is also a wonderful support here at KDE and OELE that provides a great level of assistance to the national board network across Kentucky. Also want to say that the Impact Kentucky results are now live as of February 6th. So this probably is old news in that status, but impactky.org hosts the dashboard with a rather impressive suite of tools and abilities to drill down, not only from in schools and districts of interest to you, but districts across the state. And Ellie Gilbert, Dr. Stewart, and Justin Edwards, also in a Division of Educator Recruitment and Development, have supported districts in the implementation of the impact survey. Also in our contract with our vendor, Panorama, they are providing professional learning opportunities for districts that would like to take advantage of their level of expertise in using the platform that they have created. So lots of information extended to districts. Thankfully, I think we would expect to see increases given that the last iteration was still kind of in one of the lower points still of the pandemic. And certainly we have seen positive increases in all the primary categories. Certainly, there's still areas that we need to pay attention to. We need to look at. Well-being continues to be of great concern, and I think the results are still something that are well worth ongoing attention and support for. But overall, it was at least positive to see increases in the main categories across the board. Also, want to give a shout out to the P3 team, the Principal Partnership. On January 18th, held the annual virtual ed camp, and it has just grown in success over the past 3 years, really, since it's gone to a virtual format as a result of the pandemic. But this year, it happened to coincide on a snow day for a lot of districts. And so it was convenient, or more convenient, for individuals to attend. There were over 400 that joined at some point in the day. It's really an impressive field of choices for individuals, the majority of which are hosted by leaders across Kentucky. So it's we're learning from one another within the state, with the exception of a few outside contributors that provided keynotes and updates. But just want to say, love that so many people had a great day of learning and connecting with school leaders, and this is from the majority of the evaluation responses that we received from participants that took the time. So I want to continue to celebrate the work of Keith Greiser, Stacy Noah, and Emily Satterley, as well, as we continue to provide a level of support to administrators. I really wanted you to see this graph. Of course, our certification department is always working diligently to make sure the process is becoming more efficient and expedient. And I have a wonderful comparison that shows a graph from February of 2023, and it has a nice subtle decline, meaning that the efficiency is getting better and better all the time. So we have a year prospectus to look at there, and it's always impressive to me the amount of production that they are able to do, as well as just the impact of the new system that continues to get better and better over time. And then I want to just mention that the early literacy cohort continues to work diligently as well. Dr. Melissa Diebel is our point of contact and has done a wonderful job providing meeting opportunities with our partner universities and the representatives, meeting monthly, offering 2 opportunities to meet monthly in order to make schedules work, but examining the extent to which pre-service teacher candidates are receiving training in the following: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, assessment, validity, and reliability, data interpretation, instructional design, and curriculum and field experiences. So just want to let you know that there is a dedicated group of individuals providing input on the teaching of reading at our preparation level, and it has been wonderful to be part of those conversations. There's also a third-party evaluator that still remains to be named to analyze the work of the preparation programs per the Read to Succeed Act that was passed 2 years ago. The RFP has been live once, and we did receive some solicitors. However, the amount was above what is allotted. So with a revision, the RFP was submitted again, and we did not receive any solicitations from this one. And maybe the third time's a charm. So it is going out again with some revisions to see if we can fulfill the third-party evaluator component of the Read to Succeed Act. Also, if you have not gone to Go Teach KY in a while, there's a Why I Teach podcast. So, we all need some levity and a reminder. So there is a wonderful short form podcast called Why I Teach that interviews Kentucky teachers. Kevin Daly, the 2024 Teacher of the Year, will be posted shortly by Jarvis Terrell, who is overseeing that. But just as a reminder, if you want an uplift, you've got some windshield time, it's a great opportunity to go and listen to to peers from across the state being interviewed on why I teach. And then finally, March 6th, we're nearing the Educators Rising State Competition and Conference. We have 711 students that are registered to attend. And this year it will take place at the Kentucky Exposition Center, or as I call it, the Fairgrounds in Louisville. But exciting, and we're nearing that. And we do need judges, by the way. So we will have a lot of opportunities to see students in action. And if you or you know of anyone, please let me know. We'd be happy to direct you in the right place to sign up. So thank you for your time and attention. And I believe at this time we'll have Brian Perry with the legislative update.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So before we get started, we'll just give a quick preface. We're going to talk about a handful of bills that directly impact the board. There's been over 600 bills filed in both chambers, and we still have 2 weeks to go before the filing deadlines. So we'll have over 1,000 bills, I would say, before it's all said and done. So the handful we're talking about today is a very small slice. It's also very early in the process. So one bill has made it out of its chamber, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I realized driving in this morning that I live in this world, obviously, but a lot of folks don't. So just a quick recap. A bill gets introduced in either the House or the Senate. It then has to be assigned to a committee. Then it has to be heard in committee and voted out of committee. It then goes to the floor of that chamber. If it gets voted out of the chamber, it goes to the next one and starts all over again. So it's a long path. And a bill can get amended both in committee and on the floor and in both chambers. So it's a long path for a bill to get to the governor for action. If a bill does get to the governor for action, he can sign it into law. He can allow it to become law without his signature, or he can veto it. If it's vetoed, it goes back to the chambers for reconsideration. They can override a gubernatorial veto with a simple majority vote in each chamber. So with supermajorities in each chamber, the veto is fairly powerless right now, unless it's a bill that gets to him after the veto period and they simply run out of time to override the veto. So really quick recap of how a bill becomes a law. So with that, we'll jump into the regular session. It's a budget year, obviously, so that's the top priority right now in Frankfort is hammering out what will be the final budget. We won't know that final budget until sine die, which is April 15th. As I mentioned, we have about 2 more weeks before the filing deadlines. After that, no new bills can be filed. There are some ways that legislation can get changed pretty considerably, but for the most part, at the end of the month, we will know what all the bills are that we're going to be under consideration this session. Let's see. If you want to follow along in the process, all committees are streamed live, as are the chambers every afternoon. You can catch those on either the KET website, or occasionally they get bumped over to the LRC YouTube page. But you can follow along. If you want to follow along, I would recommend the education committees and the appropriation and revenue committees are probably the 2 that are going to be the most applicable for you all. Occasionally a bill gets assigned somewhere else, but that'll cover almost everything of interest to you all. So the budget proposal or process has gotten a little strange in the last couple of years. So historically, the process started with the governor doing a budget address in mid-January or so. The next day that would get filed in the House. That became the budget bill. The House would then file an amendment to that bill, and then it went to the Senate for consideration. That all kind of went out the window a couple of years ago when the House dropped House Bill 1 in 2020, preceding the governor's announcement of his budget proposal. Well, this year, the governor got out ahead of them and did his budget address online in late December before the holidays, and then House Bill 1 came. So it's a little strange. The budget this year the House budget this year is House Bill 6. That came out a few weeks ago. There are a couple of things for the educator workforce in there that we'll talk about. You probably have heard that there are no across-the-board raises like the governor has been advocating for teachers. I think that's very unlikely to happen. What the House did was bump up the seat formula about 6% over the biennium, and then included some kind of unusual language, strongly encouraging districts to look at their surrounding states, if they're near in their surrounding districts, and see what everybody's doing in terms of teacher pay, and really strongly consider using that new seat money for teacher raises. So kind of an odd way of doing it, but or the language is a little odd, but we'll see where it goes. Like I said, it's still early in the process. We have not seen the Senate version yet. That will probably come out either late this month or early next month, and we'll see what the Senate's idea on as teacher raises are. I think it'll be something similar. I don't think they'll do an across the board raise. I think it'll be a very similar idea of pushing it through the seat formula to allow for more local control over that process. One just quick note, the governor does have line item veto power in the budget, but it's the same process for overturning it. So, all right, so let's talk about 4 or 5 bills that directly impact the EPSB. So House Bill 275 has actually made it out of the House. This is what we call a repeat bill. So Chair Tipton introduced this bill last year and got it out of the House, but it ran out of time in the Senate. This is not at all an unusual process, especially for these sort of big issues that people really want to take their time to be deliberative. So not at all surprised that we're seeing this again and that it's already out of the House. So he's got it over to the Senate. I suspect it'll get assigned to committee fairly quickly. So what he is trying to do here is essentially close loopholes that allow bad actors that are in districts to switch and move around and never really have a process whereby they get identified as a bad actor. And so that's the real intent behind 275, is to close loopholes that allow for a teacher to move districts without ever really being tagged as someone that should not be in the classroom. And so that's the intent of 275. You can see that there's a lot outlined there that won't go through in depth. But if there's any questions, that's the very high level view of what it does. I don't know if Cassie or somebody wants to give you more in depth. But I think that's the intent. So
the piece in regards to EPSB is that your staff would respond to records requests when they're being submitted by districts as people are moving districts. So if this does make it all the way through, that is one of the things that we will be bringing to you, of setting the procedures for that and how you want that to proceed going forward.
And I should have said, I usually only do these updates during the session, but we really work throughout the year on legislative affairs and on topics like this with members. So during the interim period, which runs from June to November, we do a lot of presentations to interim joint committees. We do a lot of meetings. Commissioner Kinney has had meetings throughout the fall with legislators. So we talk about a lot of these things kind of behind the scenes to really inform members. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that folks here at the department are really engaging with the legislature year round, not just during the session. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Can I ask a
Sure.
question? I haven't had a chance to read it, and you may or may not know the answer to the question, but in talking to some superintendents last year and HR directors, a question came up of who is paying for the additional background checks. Would that be paid by the district or by the individuals? And I don't know that that's spelled out in there, but that definitely was a question that came up. Are we passing that cost along to teachers as part of the recertification process, or who is paying for that? So just something to dig into.
Brian may have additional thoughts on this. It's not currently in its current form. It is not tied to recertification. It is the superintendent's responsibility to request background checks and then would have to do that every 5 years. So I believe that the bill is silent about that at the moment, and where that cost would be. I think the expectation is probably that it would be assumed by the district.
And I'll be a little surprised if this one doesn't pick up some sort of amendment committee sub in the Senate, just because it is such a big topic and there's so many folks that are weighing in. I'll be a little surprised if we don't see some small tweak. I don't think it'll be major changes, but I do think we'll see some small. So that might be something that gets considered.
And speaking with smaller districts, that was a cost that they just were not going to be able to shoulder for their staff. So just another unfunded mandate
it's
that
good.
needs
It's good
to
to
be
know.
thought through.
All right, so House Bill 300 sort of deals with the other side of this, which is the educator side. And so the issue that they're trying to address with House Bill 300 is essentially speeding up the process for teachers that have an allegation made against them. And I've put up here what's in the original bill. So this bill is on the agenda for House Education tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. We are hearing that there will be a committee sub that takes out the retroactive part there at the end. It takes out the emergency clause. Those were sections 2 and 3. And then we think there will be some changes to the bullet points there above those, which is section 1 of the bill. We're not 100% sure what those changes are. We have not seen the committee sub. So I just went ahead and put up this is what's currently in the bill. As of right now, I think tomorrow morning that will change and those last 2 pieces come out. And we're likely to see some of the other parts change. Again, this is a fine balancing act that they're trying to pull off here. They want to make sure that there aren't allegations hanging over a teacher's head for a period of time longer than absolutely necessary. At the other side of it, we don't want to go too far and go against what they're trying to do in 275, which is, strengthen safety for students. And so it's a very fine balancing act that they're trying to walk here. We have had some good conversations with the sponsor and Chair Tipton on this one. I think that, again, if it gets it'll get referred out of the Education Committee in the morning, probably with the committee sub. It'll then go to the floor of the House. Given the nature of this bill, I won't be surprised if we see several floor amendments get filed. And then assuming it gets out of the House, it'll start all over in the Senate. So this one's got a long way to go to the finish line. So keep that in mind as you read some of those bullet points. I know this is, as it was drafted, there were some really serious concerns from the board. So I think we've addressed some of them. I don't know that we'll see all of them addressed tomorrow morning, but please know that we are working on this one and having a lot of conversations around it. So I don't know what else to say at this point because it is kind of literally in process, but that's where we are on 300 at the moment. So.
If I can also add my compliments to Cassie and Todd Allen, our general counsel. Byron was at the table for the testimony on this bill. I think a lot of this is either a misunderstanding or not complete understanding of how you all address these issues. The work that has to be done, the time, effort, and energy. And sometimes it does take some time to get to the truth. And so compliments to the staff here that have worked very diligently to try to increase the expediency on getting things through the pipeline, but also to communicate a real understanding that we, like any other profession, have some bad actors, and so we need to hold people accountable. So when that occurs, it takes some time for due process to kind of work its way through. And I think by the testimony that was given on this bill previously, there was a better understanding from legislators on the time and energy that it takes. So will we get everything changed? It remains to be seen, but without the efforts of the staff here and maybe some of you even and others who understand the process better, I think it will come out as a much better bill if it does come out. Yeah. So I just wanted to interject that.
And I'll just add quickly that the composition of the House and the Senate are very different in terms of the backgrounds of the members. The House is very diverse. We have a lot of educators in the House. The Senate's very different. It is mostly lawyers. And so I do think that when it gets to the Senate, and I think it will, I do think there's a lot more attorneys on the Senate side that will probably understand the process a little more than some of the folks in the House do just because of their background with the judicial system. So we'll keep working on it. Are there any questions about 300?
I have a question.
Sure.
If this is passed, and how will it affect our board meetings? Will it make our board meetings monthly, or will it make our board meeting agendas much longer?
So we talked about this with the sponsor and Chair Tipton. This is one of the things that we're not sure what's exactly going to be in the committee sub in the morning. So our suggestion was to move the 30-day time frame to a 60-day time frame to align with your current calendar. So that's the proposal that we've put back to them. I think that there will be some change in the time frame, but I don't know if it will be the full 60 days. So there's a possibility that it could change, but we won't know for quite some time because it's so far from the finish line.
And to speak to that a little bit more, this is one that we obviously, as Brian said, will continue to follow and see how it morphs through the session. If in fact the emergency piece of that is removed and it does make it all the way through, then we would have until July to establish a regulation and procedures, which would likely mean we'll have a special called meeting to address that as well, so that the board can really look at what the final passage is, how those timelines are going to affect. We did defer discussing the board meeting calendar until April, so that we'll have a better idea at that point, because even if passed with 60 days, there's still the possibility that the board may need to meet every month, and we don't know, that may look like virtual meetings every other month, so that you have that ability to stay on top of those cases so no one gets dismissed for failure to meet timelines.
So, and I apologize again. I forget that not everybody lives in this world. An emergency clause in a bill means that it becomes effective immediately upon enactment. Bills that don't have an emergency clause typically become effective 90 days after the end of the session. So, and the AG usually puts out an opinion that tells us what that day is a few weeks after the session ends.
Do we know, and this question is for anyone who can answer, do we know other licensing boards in the state and those who obviously have to manage ethics complaints and those sorts of things, what kind of timelines that they are expected to function under, and what the normal meeting schedule is for those boards?
You know, Ms. Listerman may be able to speak to that a little bit more as we are diving into this. I know as we were preparing for the House Education, her and staff did reach out to some different boards to try to understand their processes and what they had in place. I can't speak to that right now, unfortunately. But in the educator ethics realm with other states, it really does vary. When this bill dropped, we were in San Antonio with multiple other states, and the states that I was around the table with could not believe it. This was, very outside of what their process is. And we also see some other states out there that they just take the action and then it's up to the educator to appeal. That is not how the legislature has this in place. A lot of due process is on the front end in that current process before you. And so that was one of the things that we tried to make clear with the legislature as well, is the amount of due process that is already there, protections for the educators they're going through. And yes, while some of these cases do take some time, ultimately the individual, their certificate is still in good standing while they are going through this process. It's not until the board takes final action that is actually there. But we can follow up on that, the timelines with other boards, and provide that to you.
I feel like I would just add, even as we're looking at other boards, whether it's different occupations or other states and their education, ethics committees, it all comes down to, of course, the staffing. I mean, we're running on a very limited, I feel like, staff of our attorneys and our lawyers, and their caseloads are very, very heavy. I know that point was brought up when you testified, so I would just echo that part again.
All right, we'll move on. So I mentioned that the House included a couple of items for the education workforce in their budget. 377 is about those items. So one is the teacher recruitment student loan forgiveness pilot program. So this would offer, I think, up to about $50,000 over the course of 10 years for loan repayment, but I haven't really dug into this pilot program a whole lot yet. The other is the student teacher stipend program. So this is one we've talked about for the last, year or so. So really happy to see this one get included. It would provide up to a $5,000 stipend for a student teacher. I think they're still sort of working through how this would work. Both of these are under KIA, would be administered by KIA, not by KDE. So it's really all we have about those two at this time, but wanted to make sure you all were aware of them. We have been talking a lot about, I know K-TIP got mentioned earlier, so I just wanted to mention that we've been having a lot of conversations throughout the interim about both K-TIP and K-PIP. and really pushing members to consider doing some sort of mentoring program for new teachers, really focused on those first 3 years, really as a recruitment or retention piece. But then also talking about the need for new principals to have some sort of mentoring program as well. Hopefully we'll see those still get considered as the Senate thinks about their budget, and we talk about a final budget going to the governor for action. We would really like to see some sort of mentoring program included, but very happy to see anything for the education workforce included in the House budget. So
I'm curious on this one. I'm guessing there's probably a budget analysis or something that's been done with it. You mentioned 10 years. I'm curious how this is too much different than the public service loan forgiveness program that's already offered through the federal government that is a 10-year requirement as well. So
not really sure.
It doesn't seem that
there's
much.
also a teacher scholarship that's out there.
Yeah.
It's $1 million a year right now. So we've had several conversations about how they could amend that existing scholarship. Right now, it's one of the only ones that is a loan conversion. So it converts to a loan under certain circumstances. So we have had conversations about making just changes to the existing scholarship, which might be a little cleaner and neater in my opinion, but at the same time, happy that they did something. So in the stipend program, they did ask us as a department for some data back in the fall. So we provided them some, this is typical, like this is what the department does. They have questions about these things. So we give them things like the 5-year trend data for the number of student teachers and, what other states are doing and what we think would be an appropriate amount. So that gives them some numbers as they start to formulate the budget. So. Oh,
Justin, if I could.
Yeah.
So just 2 points and one, Amber, this is a little bit to your question. There are hidden rules in the existing programs that's really limited students' access to these particular opportunities. Some of them are tied directly to certain types of schools that you have to teach in order to qualify and those sorts of things. So I do think that amending current ones certainly an option. But the other has to do with the stipend. And the last version of the bill that I reviewed, it was a completion expectation prior to receiving the stipend. And so one of the challenges that I would ask anybody who's looking at this or has influence on that language is that the cost of living stipend at the end of the living portion doesn't help. So if we're really saying that working another job in order to pay for your rent and your housing and all that while you're student teaching is the point of this, then an after is not going to be helpful. It's not going to impact the number of students who are student teaching. One that is paid at the time of, over the course of the living period would make much more sense. Probably has a lot of implementation implications, but just something to consider that a completion requirement isn't going to help anything.
That's good feedback. Thank you.
Great point.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so House Bill 387 relates to substitute teacher certification. So this would remove the 64-hour requirement or give districts, I guess I should say it could remove the 64-hour requirement. Districts wouldn't necessarily have to do that. If they wanted to keep the 64-hour requirement, they could, but it would provide that option for districts that want to utilize it, that maybe don't have a deep pool of substitutes to pull from or potential substitutes to pull from. And so you can see some of the other changes that are there as well. Cassie, I don't know what might be most of interest to the board.
So we have seen different versions of this bill for a few years now where they created a 1-year substitute certificate, which you already have in place, the 1-year emergency sub, and then proposing a 3-year and a 5-year certificate. Those changed by the committee substitute with this. Again, with the emergency sub now, instead of requiring 64 hours of college credit, it would be a high school diploma or equivalency, but it does, in the last language that I saw, it did allow the EPSB the authority to still issue a regulation with that, where you could potentially require some classroom management modules, some ethics modules, something to assist that person before they get in the classroom. The 5-year certificate would be issued to somebody with a bachelor's degree. Right now, somebody with a bachelor's degree automatically qualifies for the 1-year emergency certificate. So this would be different. They would now qualify for a 5-year certificate. And then what you currently issue is a 5-year certificate to anybody who has previously completed a teacher preparation program. They would now have the ability to be issued a 10-year certificate. That's not really going to change your process that much around those, other than that means that it would be 10 years between when they are applying and going through the character and fitness process.
Questions? All right. Might be it. Another, yeah. Thought that was, so those are really the bills that impact the EPSB directly. I don't know if there's any questions about the myriad of other bills that are out there. If there are, I'm happy to try to answer them. If not, we will continue to keep you all updated. Thank you all for asking me here to do a presentation. Always happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for all of the presentations. I think we are moving on to open speak. Ms. Chester, has anyone signed up for open speak?
Yes, we have 3 people. The first one is Jimmy Adams.
All right. And just a reminder to the board and to our speaker, we have 5 minutes, and we are we're not able to speak or to ask questions or to answer questions as a board. So just want to remind our board of that since it's been a little bit. And we'll start 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you giving me the short amount of time this morning to talk to you on behalf of iTeach. My name is Jimmy Adams. I am the Executive Director of the National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education Certification, or NASTEC. And at one time, I was the Executive Director of the Kentucky Education Professional Standards Board. iTeach, an alternative pathway to licensure program, is accredited through CAPE and has been actively involved in NASDAQ for a number of years. They are approved to operate in other states from which this board will accept licenses. The Indiana Department of Education is collaborating with iTeach to prepare 500 STEM teachers. In collaboration with the West Virginia Department of Education, iTeach has identified and is working with 200 paraprofessionals to move from paraeducators to classroom teachers. The Virginia Department of Education has approved over 50 memorandums of understanding between iTeach and school divisions, as they call them, or districts to you, to address specific needs within those divisions. The Louisiana Board of Regents reported that iTeach had a 91% effective rating on overall impact and demonstrated teaching skills. If you go a little further west, iTeach has been named by the Clark County Independent School District in Las Vegas, Nevada, the 5th largest district in the United States, as their non-college partner for a $500,000 grant for teacher preparation. And last year, the Teacher of the Year in Clark County ISD was an iTeach graduate. Later in your meeting, as you review the approval of iTeach, I would challenge you to reflect on the number of potential teachers you have that are not in the classroom because they have been unable to find a program that can adjust to their unique life situations. iTeach may be able to fill that need. I also challenge you to find out how many emergency certificates you issued this past year. While I understand the need for emergency certificates, I also recognize that these are individuals who you are allowing in the classroom who have some content knowledge, but most likely have no pedagogical training in how to convey that knowledge to students and may have very little to no experience working with children. iTeach has the ability to iTeach has the ability to reach teacher candidates in rural and urban areas, provide pedagogical training, and may assist you in reducing the number of emergency certificates being issued. If approved, I believe that iTeach is one additional tool that you will have in your toolbox to address the needs that you have as a state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. And next up, Ms. Chester.
Crystal Horde.
All right, Ms. Ford. And if you'll introduce yourself, even though a lot of us know who you are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much. My name is Crystal Horde. It's been a minute since I've sat in this chair in front of you all. For those of you all that I don't know, I see a couple new faces. I worked for the certification branch and then division here, EPSB, serving EPSB since 2006. Left this past July and accepted Director of Human Resources job at Scott County Schools. So I miss sitting here at times, but I do love my new challenge that I have. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come here and speak to you. I have a unique perspective. So having served for this board and with the certification branch for quite a few years, and now sitting on the other side and being the person that's in charge of hiring for our school district, I'm seeing firsthand a lot of the struggles that I would hear from superintendents and principals on a daily basis when I sat just down the hall. When it comes to the emergency certification regulation that is before you all today, action item A, 16 KAR 2120 for emergency certification. You all have a vote in front of you today to amend the regulation so that the board is operating within compliance of the federal IDA requirements. Something that is of concern to not only our school district, but a lot of school districts around the state is, and as Mr. Adams just said, there certainly is a need at times for emergency certification. With the elimination of emergency certifications issued in special education and IECE, even though our state is currently not in compliance, districts are going to be in a greater predicament going forward. I've read the draft regulation and there's a lot of good stuff in there. That reg really did need to be cleaned up and it has for quite some time. However, I'm concerned for a few reasons of what we're going to see in the future. Number one, the emergency certifications are in place because there's no qualified applicants available. Speaking for our district, Scott County, as of last Friday, we have 2 open LBD teacher positions and 2 MSD open positions that we do not have candidates for. We don't even have somebody at this point that would qualify for emergency certification that has applied. Some of the things that I've brought to the board previously for your review for waiver was when we had candidates who wanted to get into an option 6 program. However, their GPA was too low for admittance and they would need to take a semester worth of classes or maybe 2 semesters worth of classes to raise their GPA. So knowing that there are pathways to get somebody certified, option 6, option 7, possibly I teach after today, if their GPA is still too low to get admitted into a program, but you've got a candidate who's wanting to go to the program, we would always recommend to districts to utilize the emergency certification to bridge that gap. And also another thing to consider is some EPPs, some educational providers will only admit candidates certain semesters of the year. So if a district has a mid-year hire in January, there may be the university or institution that they're wanting to partner with may not admit candidates until the fall semester. So we've got a gap that we need to try to bridge. I believe that everyone in this room and even those behind me agree that the best practice is to direct people, potential candidates to EPP programs. And I don't believe anybody would disagree with that. But when there's no candidates available for the positions, qualified or otherwise, substitute teachers in many cases will be filling these vacancies. Under the previous regulation, there was guidance in place that districts were supposed to be following as far as training that is required. And I understand that language has been pulled from the current version of the regulation, but there is no stated training if a substitute teacher is in those special ed vacancies. Likewise, if House Bill 387 passes as it's, written now, and I know there's a long pathway to that, how will that affect subs that are, what will the profile of those substitute teachers look like that are filling some of those vacancies? Is it going to be somebody who just has a high school diploma that is in a special ed position? Also, another thing to consider is our special ed teachers who do have certification may be exceeding max load. Thank you. I appreciate your all's time. I didn't know I was going to go over.
Thank you, Ms. Horn.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Ms. Chesser.
Elizabeth Dinkins is our last person.
All right.
Got a nice whimsy to it when it goes off. Sorry.
Is it on?
It should be on.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I know some of you, but some of you I don't. I'm Elizabeth Dinkins, and I have the honor to serve as the president of the Kentucky Association of Colleges for Teacher Education. CACTE is what we call it for short. And I am here because CACTE has a rich relationship of collaborating with OELE, and we consider ourselves to be a partner with EPSB in terms of preparing Kentucky's current and future educators. Our three entities, EPSB, OELE, and CACTE, are joined by a common mission to prepare highly qualified educators who will have positive impacts on K-12 teachers, K-12 classrooms and students across the state. I'm speaking to you because I am deeply concerned about the proposed Option 7 program on the agenda. Specifically, I'm concerned about the lack of existing partnerships, data concerning completion rates of candidates, and the retention rate of teachers in the field. In terms of existing partnerships, CACTE institutions have been working to address the teacher shortage through our existing traditional alternative certification programs, as well as innovative pathways including residency options, apprenticeships, and approved Option 9 programs. These pathways are co-created with partners from the start. The partners are at the tables with us at the inception. These are not created with the promise of future partnerships, but with partnerships woven into their fabric. CACTE institutions know that classrooms, schools, and districts across our state are unique, and we work with partner districts to prepare high quality educators to effectively teach in these unique contexts. These intentional partnerships allow us to co-select clinical faculty, curate placements that mutually support the growth of K-12 students and the teacher candidate, and provide tiered levels of mentoring for alternatively certified teachers. While I understand that Option 7 encourages partnerships without requiring them, I value EPSB's authority to evaluate educator preparation based in part on the consistency and quality of field experiences, including early practicums, and the effectiveness of partnerships with local school districts. In terms of completion rates of candidates, the Texas Dashboard for Performance Indicators for Educator Preparation Programs suggests that iTeach may struggle to support candidates while they are in their program. Data shared on this dashboard indicate that less than 50% of admitted candidates complete the program within 3 years. These data beg questions about candidate admission process and support. Alternative certification programs are attractive to candidates because they remove financial barriers, and online programs offer flexibility. These benefits, however, call on EVPs to pay critical attention to admission and progression so that candidates are aware of program challenges and they're supported to fulfill their goals. While Texas is not Kentucky, these data call into question the extent to which iTeach protects candidates' financial and time investments. Texas also found that non-IHE alternative certification programs had the lowest pass rates on core subject exams for elementary educators. 5-year retention data shared on the Texas dashboard also raised questions. From 20 to 22, 5-year retention data ranges from 59 to 61%. These data are not significantly lower than the overall retention rate for alternatively certified teachers in Texas, but they are notably lower than traditionally prepared teachers with a 5-year retention rate in Texas, which is between 67 and 70%. Kentucky, like the rest of the nation, is experiencing a teacher shortage. This shortage calls on EPPs in partnership with OELE and EPSB to create innovative and expedited pathways to certification and to attract more diverse candidates. CACTI member organizations are doing this, and we're doing this with an ethos of care and collaboration. We care about the authentic needs of our current students and the authentic needs of the partner districts we work with. This option 7 proposal does not reflect that same ethos. It doesn't reflect an ethos of partnership. It reflects sort of a promise, but not something that's happening now. And the data from Texas call into question the extent to which candidates are actually supported to fulfill their goals of being teachers. People come to us because they want to be teachers. We want them to be teachers from the first day that they work with an EPP all the way to certification. I don't know what my board of trustees would do if I reported a 50% completion rate for any year of admission. I'm pretty sure I wouldn't still be dean of the EPP that I'm in, and I certainly shouldn't be president of a CACTI organization if that's the case. The scary part about this proposal is also that when you look at the Texas dashboard, this is just one of dozens of programs like this. I don't think Kentucky should open this door.
Thank you so much. Any others for open speak?
No, that's it.
Okay, all right. Moving right along. It is once again time to elect the EPSB chair and vice chair. Among other responsibilities, the chair conducts board meetings and shall encourage full participation in decision making. I will now open the floor for nominations for the office of chair of the Education Professional Standards Board. Is there a nomination for chair?
Chair Mitchell, I'd like to nominate you, Chair Mitchell, for re-election to the chair position. Chair Mitchell, thank you.
I second that nomination.
All right. Got to look at all the script here. It's like if this happens, this happens. Give me a second. I'm sorry. Are there any further nominations? It's a pretty great gig, guys.
Doing an excellent job.
Close nominations.
All right. Hearing none, the nominations are now closed. Is there a motion to approve the slate and elect Justin Mitchell as chair of EPSB?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
And I have a second. The motion before the board is for Justin Mitchell to serve as chair of EPSB. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. And the motion passes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The vice chair of EPSB is responsible for carrying out the duties of the chair in his or her absence and to admit or assist the chair as necessary. Today, the board will need to elect a vice chair. Is there a nomination for vice chair?
I make a motion to nominate Sarah Weedman as vice chair.
And she did send her regrets. She is sick today and is unable to be in attendance. Are there any further nominations? Hearing none, the nominations are now closed. Is there a motion to approve the slate and elect Sarah Weedman as vice chair of the EPSB?
Make a motion.
A second.
And I have a second. The motion before the board is for Sarah Weedman to serve as vice chair. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. So congratulations to Sarah, who I believe is probably watching right now. So, and that gets us to other updates. I will just say, just piggybacking on what Brian was saying, I am trying our hardest to make sure that our priorities that we have set is included in this year's General Assembly. I'm thrilled that there is language in there for a student teacher stipend and for some language about student loans as well. I'm working tirelessly to get K-TIP in there. I'm actually having dreams about K-TIP, no lie, about, oh my goodness, we need to make sure. So I'm hopeful that by the end, we will see fully funded of the K-TIP program in this budget here. All right, we will now move to consent items. Items A through I are listed on the agenda as consent items, and I will give the members a moment to review the list. Does anyone wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda for further discussion?
I make a motion to approve consent items A through I.
A second.
Thank you for the motion and the seconds. The motion before the board is to approve consent items A through I. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Today we have one new information item presented for review and discussion only by Cassie Trueblood.
Just decided I'd been sitting there too long, so we'll come to the front. Information item A is included on page 66 of your agenda book, and this is a first reading of proposed revisions to the regulation 16 KAR 5040, which sets the standards for field experiences and student teaching. The draft regulation is also included in your materials starting on page 68, as well as recommendations from the CACTI group regarding those. Some of these recommendations and changes are pretty straightforward and actually mirror actions that the board has already taken regarding various waivers. Those are going to include waivers to allow student substitute teaching to qualify as student teaching experience, to allow remote observations without first requesting remote observations. It just takes out that kind of unnecessary step for that. And then also for allowing payment to be received, whether that is through maintaining classified employment. Also, as mentioned earlier, the ability to receive a stipend for student teaching. Actually, two items I do want to draw the board's attention to today, and these are included in the staff note there at the bottom of page 66. Two recommendations that this board has not previously addressed, so how you would like those to be handled in the regulation going forward. The first is that CACTI has recommended that student teaching experiences not be split among multiple classrooms with multiple cooperating teachers. Right now, as you can see there, it does have multiple placements, especially for those that are seeking P12 certification or seeking multiple content areas that really can divide that placement even further. So their recommendation is to allow the one placement that would align with the needs of the student based on their previous field experiences, just to allow them to have more depth in that placement as opposed to having to split that up.
So that's their whole purpose behind that reasoning, is just more depth in the one placement as far as their recommendation to not split among multiple classrooms.
So I'm speaking from both perspectives of sitting on the waiver committee for a little while now, not a long while, a little while, and also serving as a dean at an EPP. I will say that a lot of the waiver requests that we receive in committee as a function of not being able to find the appropriate next placement, especially in the K-12 certification realms. There aren't a ton of elementary art education placements. And so you'll see 3 of them today on our agenda for waiver requests. I think too, and this is to your question, Lisa, there is a depth that is lost in every transition point. And so it really does take approximately between 2 and 3 weeks for a student teacher to fully transition to being a functional leader, education leader in that classroom. And so when we are moving someone into 2 or 3 or 4 placements, it is a challenge, and it does impact the extent to which that student teacher can fully grow into the role. And so I'm very supportive of the idea that we move into this, and it's consistent with that waiver history. So. Amy, I don't know if you have.
I agree.
EPP. Okay.
Thank you.
And so the language would still require that placement be consistent with the certification area and the grade range that they are pursuing, but that ultimately the decision would be left to the EPP regarding what placement is best within the needs of that student. Is that something that the board would like to see before a second reading or for a second reading on this?
Can I ask a follow-up question? So how does that work with the substitute teaching aspect of a student teacher? Would they only be able to substitute teach in a certain program, a certain classroom for a certain group of students or a building as a whole to be in line with the consistency of maintaining that continuity?
So the way that the language is written in there now is similar to how it is handled in practice now, where that decision is ultimately left up to the EPP in cooperation with the district to determine the needs of, again, the student. I know we have some institutions that really limit the number of days and limit the placement based upon, the strengths or weaknesses of their students, what their students are going to need within that. And so it would just be continuing that process as it's written now.
Okay, thank you.
This may be more for individual EPPs, but some of the students that we have had that have performed long-term sub duties, so they're essentially the teacher that is performing in that classroom for 6, 9, 12 weeks, whatever is needed. They've had to go and then use their planning time to observe in the other certification area. Would this help ease some of that burden for them?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, I think this is another way in which EPPs work collaboratively with districts, and that's where the partnership comes in, so that we're making sure that the student is well prepared, but also is meeting the district needs.
And I think that's the piece with the obligation versus enrichment, right? There's still going to be some want and need for these candidates to go and observe other classrooms, and that's still a really important piece. And so, CJ, are you okay today?
And I will also say that sometimes they've had earlier experiences in their methods instructors, et cetera, where we've also have evidence that they have performed and taught lessons, et cetera. So I think this, again, allows just some flexibility around to make sure that the district and the students' needs are being met.
I love it.
So it sounds like we have consensus on that one. And then they're also recommending lowering the experience requirement for cooperating teachers from 3 years to 2 years, as some providers are experiencing a decrease in the number of qualified teachers to serve in this role. Again, this is one that the waiver committee does see, with potentially only having to do one placement as opposed to multiple. It may also assist with that and the years of experience, but it is up to the board how you all would like to proceed with this. You have, as you have received these requests, you have typically approved them when they've come through the waiver committee, when a district has provided some supporting recommendations regarding how that cooperating teacher with 2 years of experience is a qualified candidate and is strong in their profession.
What is the period of time that we would have to wait to see the effects of the other changes in this regulation to then determine if we need to reduce that from 3 years to 2 years?
I think that would just be up to the board, how you would see that going forward. So right now, what's before you is for a first reading.
Okay.
Based on the discussions, we will bring you back an updated draft in April for a second reading. The April board meeting is April 8th, which gives time to file it by April 15th, assuming no additional pandemics or other disasters that may occur, which would then have it published for comment May and June. So you're not looking at it being effective until late in the fall, winter. Now, the board would also have the ability, and you have done this before, to go ahead and approve student teaching to
begin in the fall for EPPs to decide that they want to act under the new regulation while it's completing the process. So that could also help assist in your decision making about that timeline. You know, I think you have multiple ways that you can proceed with this. One is to wait and see if that's a change you want to make. You could make that change now. You could put parameters on that. One thing I'm thinking of as a possibility in your regulation for advanced educational leaders for admission to a program, it does require a rank 2. However, you also have language that if there is a strong candidate that does not have that rank 2, that individual could be admitted. So if you had something that is 3 years is the gold star, however, if someone with 3 years is not available upon recommendation from the district in support of the strength of that teacher, then an EPP can utilize that.
If I could, one of the ways when we look at the cooperating teacher requirement, it's actually it's a bit of a separate issue. And it's a separate issue in 3 different ways. One is that 3 is relatively arbitrary, and it really has to do with what kind of mentor teacher and what the high quality level of the mentor teacher. And because we have teachers coming to us from a variety of different backgrounds and experiences at this point, you could have a very talented year 2 teacher who likely that district is saying, hey, at year 3, you're eligible for principal prep. So we might be moving you into that instructional leader pathway very fast. And so it may be that year 2, we want you to be that cooperating teacher. The second one has to do with the availability of cooperating teachers right now is just really limited. And it's limited because we have a shortage in pretty much every area, right? So substitute teachers, so you've got teachers going between 3 different classrooms, at certain times. And so that is a challenge. And the third is 3 years can be a really terrible teacher too. And it's just not somebody that we want to place. So giving districts the flexibility and giving EPPs the flexibility to say, that's one that we really want to use. I think it would be very helpful relief in some of those arrangements.
So what is the direction of the board for that piece and that second revision?
Personally, I like the suggestion that you made about 3 being the gold, just because there's a cycle that every teacher goes through every year where we start out very optimistic and then there's just a cycle that you go through. And so I just feel like 2 complete cycles gives you a pretty good frame of mind of what's going on to maybe guide someone else through that cycle. And at the end of the 2nd year, you're just beginning that 3rd year yourself. But I also like the opportunity for someone who may be teaching as a second career for them and they came in at a gold level. And by that 2nd year, they are prepared. So having that option, if you have this, that the 2nd year is available, but not the standard.
I agree with that.
Are there any other things in this draft or the recommendations that you all would like to address or have questions on? Typically, our process is when we are publishing revised regulations to you, that we publish them to the board first before seeking the stakeholder feedback. However, because this one we will be bringing back for action in April and we are making changes, if it's okay, we would also publish the draft to the CACTE members to get their feedback on it, just so that we can avoid any changes that have to happen during the legislative process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. When would you publish that to them? On the 8th?
Sometime between now and April.
Will you send it to us as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, next we have action items. These items are presented to the board for action and will require a motion and a vote. Action item A, also presented by Ms. Trueblood.
Okay. Action item A is a continuation of the discussions that you all had in December regarding the emergency certificates. And this is amendments to the Regulation 16 KAR 2120. The staff note starts on page 79 and the regulation on page 81 of your agenda book. There have not been any changes to the regulation since December. Again, this is an action that is being taken to comply with federal law around the IDEA. Unfortunately, that does create some hardships, but the feds did not take that into account for us, unfortunately. So we are working with what is before us. So that amended regulation is before the board. I will note we did pull the numbers from the last school year, and with that we had, for exceptional children, 270 emergency certificates, with 145 of those being individuals that are certified in another area. Therefore, those individuals could qualify for the probationary certificate, which we will talk about in action item B. The others would need to move into an alternative program to continue within the profession. Additionally, added to that number, we had 21 emergency certificates for IECE. 11 of those were certified in another area. As we look at that total there, I believe it was 291, and we had already seen that a little less than 30 of those had moved into being on a temporary provisional certificate, so they are working in the right direction. And we also see that this is occurring in 80 districts across the state, so it's a little less than half of the districts in the state that are utilizing this. The Office of Special Education and Early Learning has been submitting this information to the directors of special education, and then also has been working on targeted communications to those individuals that currently are on an emergency certificate, as well as to their HR directors. Included in that, they are also providing information on the Kentucky Traineeship Program, which helps to offset the cost for those that are pursuing alternative certification for special education. Following this meeting, we will also be providing some directed communications that are going to highlight specific routes that are available. As I mentioned, action item B is going to touch on the probationary certificate, so we'll be able to provide some additional information on that, as well as directing them to approved programs, whether they are those that are eligible for option 6 or those that are already certified that may be eligible for the proficiency, the probationary, and then also the program teacher assignment, which is specific to those that are certified in special ed, just a separate area. So a lot of information there with that. Again, we are slightly before the 15th deadline that LRC likes to impose on us. So if approved today, it will be filed with LRC before the end of the week to start the legislative process. One thing I will note about this is this regulation does also contain requirements for the emergency substitute. Now, depending on how this legislative session goes, there may be additional changes that have to happen to that. However, we don't want to slow down this process, so you can approve this today, and then during the comment period, while the legislative session is wrapping up, if we need to make additional changes through an agency amendment, likely what we would do is just remove the substitute piece from this regulation and create a whole new substitute regulation that, or update 2030, which has some information regarding substitutes to comply with the new multitude of substitute certificates that may exist. But that is also a future problem.
Any questions?
I make a motion to approve action item A.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120 emergency certification and out-of-field teaching amendment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
I guess it's bugging me. And I'm sure no one has the answer. But I guess my comment is, or my question, are we giving any guidance to principals and teachers of what they're supposed to do when there's no one in the building that's in compliance, there's no sub available, and those students are there?
We do have someone with us from the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. Unfortunately, we're aware that that is a problem. That is a problem that is created by federal law. We are going to continue to do our best to highlight all of the resources that are available to get somebody that's qualified, but we can't guarantee that that's going to happen. So really, it's going to be just doing the best that we can and providing as much support and information as possible.
And I guess my question is, are there any protections for a teacher that's not certified but is told by an administrator to go in there anyway? I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. It just.
I'm glad you spoke up on this.
Yes.
Thank you.
You good? Am I on?
Yes, it's always on.
I'm David Wickersham. I'm with the Office of Special Education and Early Learning. This may answer your question. I'll do the best I can with it. There is no private right of action regarding the certification of any particular classroom teacher. So, for example, if you've got a student with a disability who's being taught by a teacher who is not properly certified, both within the meaning of the IDEA and also within state law, there's not really any action that could be filed against that teacher. Basically saying you violated the law by accepting this assignment and providing instruction. The default there is pretty much just to the state certification regime as that plays out, and to the extent that there's an IDEA implication for that. We don't issue advisory opinions in our office, but the way that we address it is helping the district make a determination about whether the child missed out on legally required instruction as a result of that assignment. Trying to strike that balance between recognizing that there are going to be workforce issues, but then also trying to make that student specific about whether there's actually been a deprivation of any education that child's entitled to by law. Does that kind of answer?
So Mr. Wickersham is provided from the IDEA side of it, and then Ms. Gunn to the EPSB side of that. Should someone be reported for being put into a very difficult position, this board has that information and through the rebuttal process and has always acted accordingly.
We're still in the discussion, so I want to keep that open if there are any other questions or comments that we'd like to make.
I can't help this one either. What if there's, let's say there's a problem or there is a possibility of a lawsuit that has happened. If something has gone wrong in the classroom and that person was not qualified, where does that leave us?
So I will also note that under IDEA, and again, Mr. Wickersham can speak to that more, so not to steal his thunder, but under IDEA, an emergency certified individual, so someone who has been issued an emergency certificate from this board, is not qualified. They do not meet the requirements and are violating IDEA. So that is something that can be taken into consideration in that action currently. Again, it's not a great position that the federal government has put us in. We struggle. We've talked with other states. Everyone is struggling with that. Ultimately, what we are required to do is to comply with the federal law, and failure to do so jeopardizes $190 million worth of federal special education funding for the state.
Just a quick comment. I know that Ms. Ward came to speak, sharing some concerns. I mean, have we heard from other, I mean, again, I know we're at the end of the day up against being in in compliance with the federal law, of course. But like, do we have a plan of how we're communicating to our concerned districts? Like that, I mean.
Mr. Wickersham has already been sending multiple emails out last week.
Okay.
If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, so last Thursday and Friday, I sent 272 emails out to each of the impacted individuals, copying their director of special education. Have also been in conversation with central office staff at Kentucky's 4 largest school districts, essentially just kind of following up to be sure that they're aware of the issue. Steps that they can take to remedy that, supports that they can provide, information about all the alternative certifications that fully comply with the IDA, and thank goodness the temporary and provisional do. The feedback that I've gotten so far has essentially just been, okay, I've not had pushback from any particular district, clearly acknowledging the inconvenience, the difficulty, the expense for them, but so far everybody's just sort of engaged with the problem. I've had contact back from the people that I've contacted. I've had 10 individuals follow up with me. Most of those individuals, folks who just provided information indicating that they had already shifted into some other program. So
Great, thank you.
I don't know if that's responsive.
No, that's helpful. Thank you.
And we will be supplementing that from the OELE side with the actual certification options and the approved programs.
Wonderful. Thanks.
So Cassie, can you just remind us how many of the numbers that you provided earlier are left without an option right now? Is it 100?
125.
125?
So 125, I don't know that left without an option is they could potentially qualify for the option 6. They don't, okay. The numbers where we were differentiating out to say those that already held a certificate, to say that they could, again, meet the requirements to go the probationary route. And depending on their preparation previously, may also be good, strong candidates for a proficiency evaluation. Instead, the others, because they do not and have not held a certificate, are likely eligible for option 6. Again, GPA could play a part in that as well.
But they have to take additional action.
They have to take additional action. And so would those that are certified in another area. I mean, they would have to seek out the program for the probationary as well.
Any other discussion?
I think could we ask that as we move forward, we just continue, maybe get an update on those 125 to see if we're encouraging them to get the option 6 or where they go.
So continue numbers, updates. Okay. Yeah. We can try.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have action item B.
So action item B does go along with this. This is the Administrative Regulation 16 KAR 2160 for probationary certificates. This regulation was in the queue of regulations to be amended as part of your 7-year cycle. Unfortunately, you're going to see a lot of those in April. I'm sorry. But this one also we wanted to bump up to this meeting because it does go hand in hand with the action you just took in action item A. The probationary certificate for teachers of exceptional children is an option that is available for those that already have a teaching certificate. So because they already have a teaching certificate, they're not eligible for the option 6 program. But probationary would, to an extent, mirror that because they would be employed in the position while enrolled in a program. And ultimately, that's just going to require enrollment in an approved program. that aligns with that area of certification for exceptional children. Again, it would be limited to those 3 years to comply with the federal law, and they do have to be making progress towards that to continue to be issued that. What we cleaned up in the language here, as you can see, took out a lot of language that differentiated between different programs and required hours to be completed prior to issuance of the certificate, so that it removes any barrier in being able to go ahead and get those individuals on a certificate and in the classroom for the next school year. Are there any questions regarding this one as well?
No questions? Got a question? At this time, I'll need a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to approve the amendment to 16 KAR 160.
Thank you, Mr. Fryer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2160 probationary certificate for teachers of exceptional children amendment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next, we have action item C.
Okay, this is the last action item from me today, but this is also one of the regulations that is a part of your ongoing regulation review and is set to be amended. That amendment does have to be filed before March 8th for the regulation to stay in effect. This regulation, 16 KAR 4030, sets the standards and requirements for out-of-state prepared educators to move that certificate or to move into the state. Now, this will apply to those that do not qualify for the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. As you'll remember, the compact, which is on its way to becoming operational, does allow for an individual to transfer their certificate among compact states. So, for example, if you have somebody that is certified in Utah is a compact state at the moment, and they have their Utah certificate, they could use that certificate to then be issued a Kentucky certificate without additional requirements beyond the character and fitness review with that. However, we do still want to keep 16 KAR 4030 in effect for those states that are not members of the compact, as well as for those who maybe were prepared in a compact state but did not obtain the license and so wouldn't qualify for the compact. A common scenario that this board sees is an individual who has completed their preparation program in Indiana and they've met all of the requirements for the Indiana certificate through an approved Indiana program. However, they did not take the assessment in Indiana, and they have taken the Kentucky assessments and have passed those. The board has approved those through the waiver process and has previously directed that we make that permanent, that if they qualify for the certificate minus the test, that they would be eligible to move into Kentucky with that. So we have included that in there. Some additional changes, as you can see with the regulation, which starts on page 104. We do clarify in that opening language that this is for those who do not qualify to utilize the compact. We also have updated the program accreditation requirements to reflect what this board has done around approving national accreditors, and then making the changes to section 3 and 4 to allow those individuals that have made all requirements other than passing the test to be able to utilize that to come to the state. One additional change that is in there is the removal of some requirements that were put in place that would be specific to individuals renewing their certificates who were prepared out of state. That's one thing through the compact, that you cannot place additional requirements on those that are just because they were prepared out of state. And so we have reflected that, mirrored that with those other individuals that would be moving from out of state. Additionally, it was very burdensome administratively and very difficult for our certification staff to review transcripts and to check that. This one, again, is for action, so it would, if approved, be filed before the end of the week, Chair Mitchell will get to sign multiple pages today for regulations, and we will get those started in the process.
Not necessarily specifically about this, but for the compact, is Ohio one of in the compact? I know I'm putting you on the spot of which ones. Is it the only one that's a border state that's part of the compact?
It is not a part of the compact yet. I may look to Mr. Adams. They have active legislation.
Okay, so that's the only one bordering us that is in active legislation.
Currently.
Currently, yes. Okay.
So I'm sure we've got a lot of other people that are in the same joyous time that we are of legislative session, so you may see more.
Hopefully.
I make a motion to approve action item C.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Thank you, Ms. Y'all are making it so easy today. Thank you all. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4030 out-of-state educator preparation amendment. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have action item D.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, we had our first two AQUEP approved programs or approved accreditations coming through. So that means you get to learn some new terminology and acronyms.
Yes.
So before I introduce the chair of EPSB's Accreditation Audit Committee, I want to make a brief comment regarding AQUEP terminology. In the decision-making process of the AQUEP accreditation, commissioners either affirm accreditation for 7 years, place an institution on probation, or take an adverse action in which an institution is either denied or revoked. In each of these decisions, the following notations may be made. So instead of AFI and stipulation, they use these terms, okay? A condemnation is awarded when evidence shows outstanding performance on one or more aspects of a standard or a standard as a whole. A comment calls attention to a finding that is noteworthy, but not so significant or pervasive as to warrant a condemnation. An observation offers relatively neutral, non-evaluative feedback to the provider, and a concern notes a relatively minor or restricted shortcoming in relation to one or more aspects of the standards, including cases where the preponderance of evidence is positive, but one subgroup of candidates' performance fails to meet expectations. Finally, a condition indicates a significant problem that threatens providers' ability to meet a standard and requires immediate action. A notation of 2 or more conditions may result in a 2-year probationary visit. No action by the provider is required in cases where a comment or observation is noted in the decision. Concerns are addressed in annual reports and are resolved with the AQUEP staff review. Conditions are resolved as indicated through timely presentation of sufficient evidence to the Commission. 16 KAR 5010 identifies the requirements and processes for EPPs to demonstrate evidence of meeting standards for accreditation and program approval. EPPs may pursue state accreditation or national accreditation from an EPSB approved accreditor. As a reminder for EPPs seeking national accreditation, both of ours sought AQUEP accreditation. The EPSB has approved the Association of Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation, or AQUEP, and the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation as national accreditors for EPPs. All educator preparation programs leading to certification or rank change must be reviewed and approved by EPSB. In addition to your state accreditation decisions, the AAC also reviews and makes recommendations to the board regarding the approval of all certification programs offered at the EPP. Today, we have 2 institutions that acquired national accreditation and under the updated regulation only need program approval from the state. I will now hand over this to the AAC chair, Dr. Faye Dieters, for her summary of the review and decision process.
Good morning. Morning. First, we have action item D. The AAC met on December 13th, 2023 and examined all materials for initial programs for the Thomas More University. AQUEP stated, based on examination of the case record, including the program's quality assurance report, and the AQUIP Quality Review Team report, the Accreditation Commission awarded accreditation for a full term of 7 years to Thomas More University Educator Preparation Programs for initial programs. As noted to this action relative to aspects 4A, 1C, and 2D, the Accreditation Commission issued an observation that the program has identified the need to improve candidates' preparation for culturally responsive practice, for working with English learners, and for using data to inform instruction. Therefore, the AAC recommends program approval for Thomas More University's initial programs.
At this time, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, thank you, Dean Murphy. Thank you, Dr. Lingo. The motion before the board is to approve Thomas More University approval of initial programs. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is action item E.
Thank you. Next, we have action item E. The AAC met on December 13th, 2023, and examined all materials for initial and advanced programs for the University of Kentucky. AQUIP stated, based on examination of the case record, including the program's quality assurance report and the AQUIP Quality Review Team report, the Accreditation Commission awarded accreditation for a full term of 7 years to the University of Kentucky Educator Preparation Programs for initial and advanced programs. As a notation to this action, AQUIP commissioners also attached 2 comments calling attention to noteworthy program strengths. One relative to aspects 4A and 2E, the program's active collaboration with its stakeholder community as a model that builds a candidate's capacity for their own professional engagement and continued growth. And 2, relative to aspects 3D and 3E, the education program faculty and staff made significant and notable efforts to continue high-quality assessment system development, implementation, and ongoing use for continuous improvement following a significant external event impacting the quality assurance system. Therefore, the AAC recommends program approval for the University of Kentucky's initial and advanced programs.
Thank you. At this time, is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. The motion before the board is to approve the University of Kentucky approval of programs. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next, we have action item F.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So action item F is the option 7 iTeach proposal. And before I get started on that, I know we do have some staff from iTeach that are going to join me at the table.
Great.
So I'll go through this information and then I'll let iTeach introduce themselves and you can ask questions as needed. So iTeach submitted their proposal again, and from the last meeting, they took all the questions that you had and they submitted the documentation and answered all your questions. So I'm just going to go through that pretty quickly. So iTeach Kentucky is part of the larger iTeach US organization. They have maintained continuous accreditation by the National Council for Accreditation of Teacher Education, or NCATE, and the Council for Accreditation of Educator Preparation, which is CAPE, since 2012. Most recently, iTeach earned full accreditation at the initial licensure level from CAPE in October of 2019 for a 7-year term ending in December of 2026. So their next on-site review is scheduled for spring of 2026. iTeach has 150 active memorandums of understanding with school district partners in 8 states, including extensive district partnerships in neighboring states of Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia. iTeach Kentucky is committed to establishing partnerships with Kentucky school districts, cooperatives, and providing consistent high-quality clinical experiences in collaboration with candidates employing districts in alignment with CAPE Standard 2. iTeach is nationally accredited educator preparation program provider petitioning for approval to provide an option 7 alternative route to certification institute in Kentucky. While the 2022 guidelines recommend that petitioning providers who are not already accredited by EPSB demonstrate partnerships with an institution of higher education accredited by EPSB, neither the administrative regulations nor the guidelines require that a petitioning provider partner with an existing Kentucky educator preparation program. As an entity dedicated to alternative teacher certification, iTeach has invested in the in-house development of a robust educator preparation curriculum that meets state and accreditor standards, and as noted above, has earned full accreditation by CAPE. iTeach can offer a cohesive and peer-reviewed educator preparation program that does not rely on third-party arrangements for the provision of its coursework. iTeach's institute proposal that they submitted, they have highlighted in yellow to indicate all changes made based on the reviews received and is included in all of your board materials. So I'm going to stop there and I'm going to let them introduce themselves and whatever information they want to provide, and then you all may have a conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Mitchell and board members. I'm Diane Huber, the founder of iTeach. 23 years ago, while teaching at a large state university in educator preparation, I wondered why teacher preparation was so expensive and a barrier to students. After I founded iTeach 22 years ago, with a vision to remove barriers, including a financial barrier to teaching. Some in the educator arena thought that the low cost of iTeach meant lower preparation standards. Nothing was further from the truth. I wanted to offer assurances not only to our candidates, but to the districts with whom we serve, that the iTeach preparation program not only met, but exceeded the high standards of education preparation by many institutions that are CAPE accredited in your own state. iTeach went on to become the first non-traditional entity to achieve national accreditation through CAPE, and we maintain our CAPE accreditation today. Throughout the years working with CAPE, iTeach has focused on the continued review of our curriculum and program components to ensure alignment with the most recent research on instruction, legislative mandates, and best practices. Our history in Kentucky goes back to having a relationship with Mike Rogers and Mike Carr back in 2009. In 2019, I had a meeting with Commissioner Lewis and Robert Akers regarding some data I had discovered. In looking at the data for iTeach Tennessee, I found that numerous Kentucky residents were crossing the state line, coming into Clarksville, Montgomery County to get their teacher certification. And when visiting with these individuals, they said there's no option for us. We're a Fort Campbell resident and we want to get certified. We want to teach. I wanted to share this information with Commissioner Lewis so that iTeach could be part of Kentucky's solution. That conversation started our journey to submit our current application, to coming before the board, for Andrew, Roselle, and I to participate in a Zoom meeting with this board. And I would like for you to know that iTeach would have been here at your December meeting, but we were not notified that our application had been reviewed, much less that we were on the agenda. It was not until correspondence between Davita and Sharon in January that we learned our application had been reviewed, it had been moved forward, and was on the board. We would not have missed the opportunity to come before you and answer any questions you have. We're here today, and thank you for this opportunity.
Good morning.
morning.
Thank you for the invitation to attend today. My name is Davita Gatlin. I'm the Director of Community and Government Relations with iTeach, and in my role, I attend to state compliance and prepared the proposal that you have in your board materials today. I started my career as a middle school teacher and have spent the past 15 years in the field of teacher preparation. At iTeach, we are proud of our team's work to prepare our rigorous yet accessible content and our program staff's work to support candidates from admission through their clinical experience and to completion. Earning CAPE accreditation is a crowning achievement, but doesn't bring complacency. So like all CAPE accredited providers, we're committed to continuous improvement through regular and systematic review of candidate and program data and improving our program in alignment with current research, best practices, state and national standards. Indeed, the proposed program here today has completed multiple rounds of review with feedback from Department of Education staff and a committee of external reviewers. And each time we've reflected on this feedback and used it as an opportunity to improve our program for Kentucky and to ensure that we're meeting the standards set by this board for the preparation of teachers. We've begun to and will continue to forge relationships with Kentucky districts as we have in the neighboring states of Virginia, West Virginia, Tennessee, and Indiana, and across the country, while also providing candidates the opportunity to seek and obtain employment in their home community, not in a specific district of our choosing through our partnerships. We've demonstrated as well how our coursework is aligned to the Kentucky Professional Teacher Standards and the Professional Code of Ethics for Kentucky Certified School Personnel. We know and have heard today that more and more prospective teachers have been and will be seeking out alternative certification options. We saw in the recent Kentucky Public School Employee Staffing Shortages report that there were nearly twice as many Option 6 alternative certificates issued in 2023 than in 2020. The report also tells us the number of open teacher positions increased 260% over the past 4 years. And the number of emergency certificates also doubled between 2020 and 2023. With over 1,000 emergency certificates issued in 2023, and as we've heard today, 270 of those in special education. And we know that many of those individuals that you spoke of today are going to need an option for an alternative certification program that prepares teachers for special education. Currently, per our research, there's only 2 approved Option 7 programs and only one of those preparing teachers in the critical needs area of special education, and then only if they're employed in Nelson County Public Schools. Neither of these programs are preparing candidates for middle school certificates in the critical needs areas of math, science, or social studies, or world languages either. iTeach is proposing to offer all of these certification areas, including special education. And with continuous enrollment, applicants will not have to wait until the next semester to start the program. The board is charged with providing alternative routes to certification for non-traditional teacher candidates. iTeach proposes to help address the shortage that we've heard so much about today as just one of the options out there, among others, to prepare these candidates to start a career in the classroom. Thank you for having us here today.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
I appreciate the time you've given us to speak and have these prepared remarks. My name is Andrew Rozelle, and I serve as the president of iTeach. I've been with iTeach for 17 years, and I'm a high school certified math teacher. iTeach has been training teachers for over 20 years. The impetus for our creation was to provide an affordable and accessible route to high-quality training. This remains true 21 years later. I'm confident that the quality of our preparation and the reputation we have built is the reason we've been recommended for approval by KDE staff. As goal 1 of the adopted goals and strategy of EPSB state, every approved EPP meets or exceeds all accreditation standards and prepares knowledgeable, capable teachers who demonstrate effectiveness in helping all students reach educational achievement. This struck me because recently I had someone apply to iTeach to work for us, and I was convinced that the resume was written in light of the job description because the alignment was so strong. And I feel in a similar way, same about our mission and the goal 1 of EPSB. The alignment is strikingly similar. At a previous board meeting, some members expressed hesitation for approving our program. One concern was an alleged conversation between a previous board member and the Texas Commissioner of Education, in which iTeach was identified as, quote, detrimental to the teaching workforce. The statement seems to have no merit, as conversations that we've had directly with Commissioner Morath have confirmed that he has no recollection of this conversation or saying such things with any board member here or previous. iTeach has continually operated in good standing in Texas for 21 years and has worked closely with the Texas Education Agency and the State Board of Educator Certification to ensure we meet and even exceed quality and accountability standards set by the state. I might add that unfortunately, iTeach gets lumped in with some bad apples in Texas, admittedly. We are not like the other dozen, as mentioned before, in terms of quality and accountability. Most recently, this past meeting in January, we received full accreditation and approval from EPSB. Some of the other programs that we get lumped in with, sadly, are not. And in fact, one was put on its second year of probation. Data evidencing our effectiveness and impact in Texas has been included with the additional materials requested by the board. For example, the certification exam rates for iTeach candidates has met or exceeded the state average for the past 5 years. And our program completers stay in the classroom with 1, 3, and 5-year retention rates that meet or exceed the state averages. We are also pleased to share that iTeach was recently recognized by NCTQ as a standout institution for our support and our test takers and passing licensing tests. As NCTQ highlighted, iTeach exceeds the state averages and first attempt pass rates. Even so, we still seek to improve our program to better serve prospective teachers, schools, and ultimately P-12 students that they teach. As an example, recognizing the benefit of content-specific support for teacher candidates in the field, we proactively decided this past school year to hire and assign iTeach instructional coaches for every iTeach teacher in Texas, supplementing the already strong support provided by our iTeach field supervisors. We are the only EPP in Texas to have introduced this innovation, and we're already seeing such success this year that we're looking to offer the support in additional locations in the future. Another concern surfaced at a previous board meeting was the lack of partnerships between iTeach and universities. iTeach is seeking approval as an Option 7 institute, offering our CAPE accredited educator preparation program as a preparation option in the state, and we welcome the opportunity to partner with any college or university in Kentucky. We currently have 4 university partners that recognize iTeach coursework for graduate level credit towards a master's degree in education, which is a benefit not only to our completers as well as an effective recruiting tool for our university partners seeking increased enrollment in their graduate programs. As you've heard, we pride ourselves in our quality of instruction and have earned the same approval as many of the universities in Kentucky, like the University of Louisville, Spalding University, and Western Kentucky University. As provided in this application, we articulated how our courses meet and even exceed the requirements of the application conditions. We are confident in the content and the quality of our application and of our program. We are proud to have helped over 29,000 individuals find fulfilling careers in education. Most recently, we're very proud of our graduate earning Teacher of the Year in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is, as Jimmy mentioned, the 5th largest school district in the nation. We are seeking to earn the approval of our submitted applications so that we can partner with the efforts of the department and the board to achieve our mutual goal, provide every student with highly effective, well-trained teachers. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open it up for questions that you might have or comments.
I think earlier today during Open Speak, we heard from a few folks and offer an opportunity for iTeach to respond to some of the data that was presented this morning.
Thank you for the question, and I can start with that. In looking at the dashboard, the way iTeach functions is different, as you can tell from our higher ed friends. iTeach has admission and we enroll. In Texas, a candidate has to pass the content test before they can be hired, but they can be admitted to a program. So we have rigorous admission standards that exceed the state standards. And once someone is enrolled in the iTeach program, it is with the understanding they're enrolled for at least 2 years. They begin their coursework, they're enrolled, they have to go through testing before they're hired. They cannot be a completer until they're hired. Many along the way either cannot pass the test, even with the support we give them, or after field experiences, they decide teaching is really difficult and they don't want to go in it. But more importantly, there are no fees charged to these individuals. They come to our program, they pay an enrollment fee of $250, and that allows them access to the teaching channel. That allows them access to passage prep for test review and all of their coursework to prepare them. They do not pay. They have the option not to pay until they are hired and they are obtaining a teacher's salary. So yes, from enrollment to completion, that's not the same group of people. Our completers are from previous year enrollment. So when the fact was given, we had a 50% completion rate. That's not comparing apples and oranges. We have a 97% for those that are hired to complete the program. But we have a large pool of admitted who don't complete.
I'll pick up from there. And if you heard other three, I heard three deep concerns mentioned earlier. One was lack of partnership. Two was the data that Dr. Hubert spoke on, and three was retention. Lack of partners, like we mentioned, we are open to any university or college partnering with us. That conversation is always on the table. I will note that we have over 150 current partnerships that include universities, districts, states, region service centers. And so I think there's evidence to show that we are open to collaboration and partnership. On the data point, the one thing I would add to Dr. Huber's remark is we actually have a decent amount of military going through the program. And so through the flexibility, we have individuals who are admitted, but they're not actively even looking for a job. And so it's kind of, the data is skewed a little bit when you look at who would be enrolled in our program actively looking for a job, if you were to mitigate some of those situations of individuals who are overseas coming back or on military bases. And then I would also say one of the data pieces that was mentioned earlier was testing. And again, NCTQ distinguishes us as a standout institution in our test preparation, and the report just most recently given from Texas, where we're held accountable for all of our testing, shows that we meet the accountability standards for all our testing areas, save for one, which is 6 through 12 business and finance, which is a very niche area and which is notably one of the hardest exams in Texas. Those other dozen that we kind of get lumped into, if you were to look at their testing, it's not even comparable to ours in terms of their lack of accountability and being put on probation in part of that. And then the last thing was retention, and I have the retention here for our 1, 3, and 5 years, specifically coming out of the Texas data, and we exceed all alternative certification routes on average for retention in both 1, 3, and 5 years. And so to be frank with you, I don't really have a concern with our retention. The data that we have coming from all of our states shows that we exceed or beat all other retention data points by and large across all the states we operate in. If there's other concerns mentioned, I'm happy to address them.
And then just to continue on the topic of the completion rates, I think that is, as both my colleagues have pointed out, right, we have there's a very specific reporting year when it comes to those data as are collected and presented by states. And that reporting year really may make sense for a traditional program that is typically admitting students in the fall and expecting to see their students complete their program in the spring, however many years later. For a program such as ours that offers continuous enrollment and self-paced learning, right? Those particular year-to-year completion rates do not paint the full picture. As Andrew said here, we have folks coming from all walks of life, many career changers, folks that are still working a full-time job while they're engaged in their coursework before they're hired as a teacher of record. Folks that are in the military or military spouses, right? Folks that have many different situations. And I think the great benefit of iTeach is that self-paced learning. They can take the time that they need to go through that coursework. They can pause on that. They can come back to us at a later time. Many of those folks may, through engaging in that beginning coursework, decide perhaps this isn't the career for them. That is also okay. They may be counseled out. That is also okay, and something that CAPE encourages, certainly. And then many of those folks as well, again, may not enter into their field experience on that timeline that you would expect to see from a traditional program. So that data just really doesn't paint a full picture of the support that we offer to the folks in their many different walks of life, many different trajectories that they could be having.
Other questions or comments?
Can you define partnership? What do these partnerships involve? Like, what does the memorandum of understanding include?
Is there a specific entity, or are you talking about universities or districts or?
You were discussing 150 partnerships that you have.
So I can start. There's a wide range depending. So on the district side, it looks different than like the regional service side or the state level. So we engage in flexible understanding MOUs with different districts, whether it be, so in Tangipahoa, Louisiana, we have an MOU that addresses a very specific parish rubric for their schools inside that parish, in which we have agreed and worked through to embed that specific parish rubric into the introductory course, just to frame our teachers who will be teaching that parish that specific course. Other times it's data arrangements so that we can understand more fully some of the cadence of the student and get data back for teacher effectiveness, retention, and so forth. Other partnerships, for instance, in Clark County, Nevada, we are partnering. Clark County established 2 preferred routes to certification. One is as I teach, the other is UNLV. And so that actually is an agreement for reimbursement, data sharing, effectiveness, and things like that. So currently in Clark County, anyone who would like to go through I Teach for the next 3 years, it's being paid for by Clark County. So there's actually no cost for individuals to go through a program in the Clark County School District.
So could you talk a little bit about what assessments, you mentioned a self-paced module that candidates go through on their own. Can you talk a little bit about the assessments and how your team looks at that data to determine if candidates are making progress, and if they're not, then what happens?
I will begin there, and thank you for the question. I originally wrote all the curriculum for I Teach when we started. We are now in our 6th iteration based on state mandates and more recent research. But each module, each course is equivalent to 45 hours seat time, similar to a institution of higher ed. The course will contain assignments, which may be essays, some field experience. Those are all submitted to the instructor for individual grading. So every course will have assignments based on the curriculum. Also, in every course, there are assignments that are computer generated with question banks so that they get different questions. Those are immediately graded. The candidate must always score an 80% or higher on every assessment. If they don't, there's a 24-hour waiting period to allow for review before that assessment is open again. But on the assignments, every instructor with I Teach is a certified teacher. If it's a specialty course such as special ed, the instructor will be a special ed teacher. So every assignment, whether one would be developing a lesson plan, and it's scaffold. The teacher must identify the state objectives. They must identify the outcomes they want. They have to write their objectives. They have to plan the lesson, complete from opening to closing, and providing their assessment. So that is all hand graded by the course instructor.
And I'd like to add to that, all the culminating assessments on each course are graded on a rubric with a defined level of mastery that the instructor is looking for in order to determine that the student has passed that assessment. Each of the courses as well are sequential, so they must complete all the assignments in a given course, including that final culminating assessment, and then, have determined that they have mastered all the objectives in that course before they're allowed to progress to the next course. There were sample assessments included in the appendices to the application that the external review committee reviewed.
I have a question. Is your website, I Teach, current to everything that is required in every state that you offer I Teach, that I Teach is offered in?
You're speaking of like admission requirements? What do you mean by requirements?
Sure, like, so to become a teacher, if I click on the different states like Arkansas or Texas or Indiana, you list the steps under each one. Some of those states have only a single course listed, like TVC 5000. Others, so my concern is the states that have only one course listed. That is 45 hours total seat time for that course.
Oh.
So-
Go ahead.
So to answer your question, I believe the website's fully updated.
Okay.
That is a singular course in the sequence of 7 required courses.
Mhm.
When an individual applies to our program, they get the first course, which is usually a moniker of TCKY or TCVA 5000.
Mhm.
It's an introductory course that sets the kind of stage for the remaining courses. So it calibrates them to the state standards, the state acronyms, the expectations of the program. Every individual is required to take that prior to enrollment. And it's free. Any one of you could apply and see that course in its totality for free. It's one way that we can assess the individual's commitment to the profession, and they understand the expectations the program will have, while also infusing some content and material in that course. But that's not the totality of the course sequence. It's simply the introductory course.
Yeah. To access the course catalogs for each state, I don't know that those are public, like you're able to get to those with a click. I believe that you have to enter in your information and that is sent to you. And pardon me, I should know this, but the way that the web developers set it up. So I think they have to enter in their email address and receive the course catalog so that they can see the full. And there's also a certification, so they get access to, when they put in an interest form, both the certification guide that walks them through the process steps, as well as the course catalog that gives them the course sequence for their particular state and their particular area of certification. And the 7 courses being the sort of minimum core, and then other states may have, additional requirements based on those state standards as well.
Thank you.
Hi, just wanted to say thanks for being here, and thanks for responding to our questions and providing that document in advance of this meeting. I know we've talked a bit about the courses and assignments and assessments. I know you had mentioned like the field experience piece. Can we talk a little more about that? I'm kind of curious how that looks on when someone goes through iTeach, and just kind of how that connects to potential relationships that Dr. Murphy had asked about too, with districts and
Thank you
such.
for following up. I know that was a concern of yours and you addressed it at the December meeting. So although not required in option 7, iTeach feels it is important for individuals to get as much exposure to that classroom as possible. So we encourage, and I think that was the specific word, we encourage, it's not mandated. Many of our individuals are career changers and they're currently employed. And I have a problem with a currently employed person calling in sick so they can go observe a classroom. That's sort of unethical to me. So we have made arrangements with the teaching channel, videos to observe summer school. If you have vacation, go observe, and observations are embedded in the coursework to go look at that. And then once a candidate is hired, it is a semester teacher of record on an emergency permit, and we then have supervisors go in, observe, mentor, and coach. I think in the December meeting, it was said that was the expense of the district. That's incorrect. iTeach pays our supervisor. They are not district employees. They are ours, and we incur that cost. We don't ask the district to incur any cost for any of our candidates.
And one just clarification there, that would be on their temporary provisional certificate, where they would do their culminating clinical experience as a teacher of record.
Thank you. Does that address your concerns?
No, that's helpful. I mean, and I guess Cassie, just kind of a follow-up. I'm thinking like an Amber and I who went through like an option 6, right? And I know option 7, of course, is coming to us through legislation side of things. So, right, someone could go through an approved option 7 route and never have to be sitting in a classroom at any point, right, before they complete.
Oh, no, they have to.
So that's the part I'm getting confused
So
about.
option 7.
Sorry.
Option 7 is created by statute. It is one of the currently, and hopefully we are staying at 9 options to certification that are in place. Option 7 does specifically provide for the institute approach to this. So while there is, prior to receiving that 1-year provisional certificate, there is coursework that has to be completed depending upon which level of certification you're approving. That's the institute piece, and it does specify the breakdown of that. looking here for elementary, it's a 240-hour institute based on 6-hour days for 8 weeks. And half of that, in accordance with your regulation, at least half of that has to be completed before the temporary provisional can be issued. Additionally, with the temporary provisional, candidates under the option 7 route, they have to have the bachelor's degree. The GPA requirement is in statute. They have to have a passing score on an admissions assessment. Option 6 currently does not have to have that piece to it. And they also have to pass the academic content assessment before they can get the temporary provisional. Now, while on that temporary provisional, that is when they would have to be the teacher of record, because for a temporary provisional, you have to have the admission to the route. So in this case, it would be admission to an option 7 program, as well as employment in a district as a teacher of record in that certification area. Then while on the temporary provisional, that's where they would complete the mentoring piece, serve as that teacher of record, and would have to ultimately comply with the requirements and the guidelines and regulation and pass the PLT portion of the praxis before they could be issued the full professional certificate. Where this differs from, and that's a statutory creation, option 6 is specific to a college or university program where they are enrolled in a post-baccalaureate program simultaneously with employment. So again, iTeach would not qualify for an option 6 program, just as they would not qualify for the traditional teacher preparation program. It is specific to the option 7.
If I may add on there, I think perhaps some of the confusion is just in the terminology. Again, different terminology. The field experience, for example, in a traditional program in Kentucky, requiring the 200 hours of field experience prior to student teaching. So they have exposure to the classroom prior to student teaching, and student teaching would serve as their culminating clinical experience. So that field experience would be observations and interactions in the school environment. That is what we're saying. We encourage that, but because our candidates are career changers, employed elsewhere, et cetera, and the regulations do not require that they complete hours of observations and interaction in the school community before they enter that culminating clinical experience. And we also are not requiring that, but we're encouraging it because we do think it's important if it's feasible. The culminating clinical experience would be, as Cassie shared there, on the temporary provisional certificate, and that is under iTeach supervision. And they are going to do that minimum of a semester of culminating clinical experience as a teacher of record with the observations by the iTeach field supervisor that is hired and compensated by us. But so that's just to differentiate. So they are absolutely in the classroom under our supervision and while they are still enrolled in our program, and all of that happening prior to being recommended.
And let me also say that this isn't an isolated decision. Our field supervisor will visit with a mentor teacher if assigned. They will visit with the principal. The principal has to agree that the field experience has been successful. So it is a joint effort. We don't go forward in a silo.
How are your clinical supervisors trained?
We have a summer conference each year where we go and we train. I do some of the training, Andrew does some of the training, the state directors, where we go over best practice. We show them videos we have them calibrate what they would observe. We get in team meetings to make sure that we are consistent in our rating, but it is a full day of training, which we video. It is posted in our field supervisors have their own course where it is posted that they can go back and refresh the memories, the rubrics, everything are posted in that course and covered during training.
Are there any background requirements as far as teaching experience for the clinical supervisors? Like what are those employment requirements?
Yes, and those I believe were included in the application. Off the top of my head, it's 3 years experience. Are you asking for the mentor teacher?
The clinical,
the field supervisor.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
They are a certified teacher. They have years of experience. If possible, we would like a reference, but many don't or haven't been in the classroom for a few years, but we do require that they have hold a current state license. They are trained and they have years of experience.
I would just add, currently we have just over 200 ish field supervisors serving our candidate base, and they are consisting of retired teachers, administrators. We actually have some superintendents that work with us. They do the annual calibration. They do an onboarding training. We have a federal background check for them, and so we feel that's a proper way to vet them.
I have a question. And this is just from a teacher perspective. I know what the teaching videos usually look like. They're normally an ideal teaching circumstance. There's somebody in the back with the more disruptive students helping them out, or they've been removed from the room. And I'm just being very candid about what I've experienced when I watch teaching videos, even those provided by my district. Love y'all, but that's the truth. And so when I come into the actual physical classroom and see little Johnny spit on Sally and see how an actual teacher deals with that, or see how many times the intercom interrupts, or how many times the phone rings, or all of the things that happen when you're not planning a video day. My question, and I'm sorry, that was just kind of to set it up. I apologize, it's just how my brain works. Prior to being hired, locked in to pay the full amount, now that I'm in the classroom, I'm the full-time teacher of record, and I've given up my full-time position. Am I understanding that some of your teachers end up in that circumstance based on videos and not really being engulfed in the realness that is teaching?
I mean, that's a valid question. I appreciate you bringing it up. So there is situations in which they could enter the classroom and that day one is day one teaching. We've been there. I would encourage you to visit our partners at the Teaching Channel. They do have some exemplar videos of great teaching. They do have teaching that's a little bit needs feedback and needs some direction. And so we try during the calibration sessions to use those. In fact, Teaching Channel has invested some resources this past school year, and they added about 80 videos, a lot coming from Oakland, California. And those videos range in terms of teacher competence. And so there is some evidence of teachers still learning, but to your point, even if they saw a bad teacher and were like taught like this is not what you do, I think once you get in the classroom, there is, no matter how much we train them, there's going to be a shock, even if they did student teaching, because once you're spotlight at the front of the classroom, it's a different ballgame. And so we appreciate that and we respect that, but we also require our supervisors, our field supervisors, to be all over that. And so we try to front end the engagement of our field supervisors. So on that day one, that week one, there's a lot of engagement. There's cell phone, there's texting, there's phone calls, there's Zooms to help that teacher right out the gate to make sure they're successful from day one.
And also, the question is so valid. I was an alternatively prepared teacher myself, so I was feeling everything that you said right there very much. And the question is valid, but it is one that applies to any circumstance where a teacher is entering into the classroom, be it through an alternative route, be it on an emergency certificate, right? They're making a choice to make a change in their career, and to, jump into something that is, they really may not know what they're getting into fully until you're there and immersed in it. But again, as Andrew shared and as Dr. Huber shared, right, they have the support of that field supervisor, which somebody on emergency certificate, for example, wouldn't have that same support with them throughout that experience. So.
And I would just say, Kathy, that I hear what you're saying with that, but that's also the same situation we see in Option 6 programs where teachers coming in for the first time to the classroom through that Option 6. So not saying it is Option 6 and Option 7 are different, but at least in that situation, it would be similar that their first chance to the classroom could be their first day.
Could I add to that though? I feel like I'm reflected on my own Option 6 experience, which was a really positive experience. And I was on the track where I got a job right away, and my day one was, right? I was teaching, so I feel that. But I was also going to classes with real humans who were also on the same track. And beyond what I was getting from the institution and the professor, I had that built-in support. I was working with an institution that had deep relationships with the school districts in the area and could help navigate through lots of things, right? And then, of course, the students in the Option 6 program who did not land, that immediate employment were automatically starting to log hours. And I can't stress enough, everything you're saying, like our job, right? We're trying to fix the shortage, right? I totally agree. Someone is looking at making a change, like asking them to take off, their real job, right? I feel you, and I love the sentiment there, right? I'm just, I think it's sounding more and more clear that the way the statute's written, and kind of to the point we talked about in December, whether we have concerns or not, the program meets the statute, and I think that's what we kind of talked about in December. But I think we're all feeling natural hesitations and concerns. I don't know. It's just, Amy, you can jump on that.
And I think the difference is in an Option 6 program, the district and the university co-interview those applicants. So there is more information that is gathered to ensure that that individual could be successful because we have some background knowledge, we're able to interview them, and it's really a mutually co-constructed experience for Option 6 candidates. And I think it goes back to Dr. Murphy's point earlier. It's the partnership. While we can kind of think about elements of partnership, that partnership that exists between an institution of higher ed and a district is critical. And it's on the ground every day, those conversations and collaborations that occur that allow, I think, our Option 6 candidates to be successful and allow our other alternative methods such as apprenticeship and residency programs.
And I appreciate the structural side of a proposal and the regulation against which we have to, or the guidelines of which we have to assess that proposal. I am compelled by the completion data. It is problematic. Whether you want to call it a university setting or not a university setting, we are all obliged to make sure that these students that enter our programs complete our programs. And that is something that the Nelson County model has. That is something that the KDDC model has. And to have an organization in front of us that says, yeah, some people who enter don't. And at that level, it's 50%. That's not something, and I was swayed because Dr. Jenkins very clearly identified my job future, that if I am not at 50%, we are not doing our job. Or if I'm not at 90% of the people who enter our programs, we're not doing our job. So I remain unconvinced at this point as a function of that completion data.
And going back to the interview component is assessing dispositions. Dispositions are, as we all know around this table, dispositions and the dispositions that a teacher possess are absolutely critical and is very important at admission. And I feel like that through this interview process and this ongoing assessment of dispositions and coaching for our candidates is extremely important. And again, the completion data is problematic.
Yes, ma'am.
We also believe, as a CAPE accredited institution, that dispositions are critical to our profession. Therefore, every candidate goes through an interview, is the name of it, where our candidates are assessed on the identified 10 CAPE dispositions, and they are evaluated on that all the way through the program up until the time they complete. And again, I'd like to go back. Our completer record for those that are hired is 97%. We are opening the door to individuals who demonstrate the disposition and the heart to teaching. They may come. If they want to drop out, they may drop out. If we think they need to drop out, we counsel them out. But it is an opportunity to increase our professional membership. We are not closing the door. We're helping them come in, teaching them, and I see your frown, and I'm so sorry, because we believe that there's a need to increase people in our teaching profession, and we're opening the door for those with a heart as identified on the disposition, helping them try to pass the test. If they're not successful, they don't go forward. But I don't believe I Teach should be judged because we're opening the door to our profession and they're not all getting out.
Can I add one thing? Because I think the concerns of the board about completion is being heard, and I appreciate the perspective. One thing I would note is I'm not sure if any of the board members have looked up at the TEA data dashboard. It was mentioned this morning by an individual. I would encourage you to actually look at the data yourself rather than taking it from someone who interpreted data. Because what you'll find in the data dashboard is there's not a data point that says completion rate. That's not something the TEA actually measures. There's no such thing as a completion rate. In order to get to a completion rate, you would have to look at the data and the flow through and make a calculation. We heard a calculation that said 50% this morning, and it's in your minds that's 50%. I would disagree on the premise of that assumption, but moreover, our internal data would say within 2 years, every individual that's enrolled in our program, 88% of them have found placements in schools. It's not 50% from applied to completed. So of our enrolled population, those who have paid $250 who are getting 7 different instructors, test prep teacher for no additional cost. If they resign or they withdraw from the program, we don't ask for anything of them. There's not any balance to be had. We feel it's a pretty accessible way for individuals to view the teaching profession for the first time. But again, of individuals who enroll in the program, 88% of them find jobs. We are held accountable for their testing record. And of the individuals that get hired, we have an extremely competitive retention rate in the field.
That's exactly my question. So thank you for that segue, because what I had written down was of the completers. So let's just drop those who are enrolled, but those who complete that 88%. What is the percentage that are still retained, employed as teachers 5 years later?
So ours is 62%. The state average for this is Texas data. The state average for Texas is 57%.
So is that only in Texas? Because I saw, I'm on your website,
Sure.
And I saw several states besides Texas. Is that your cumulative percentage in all states or just Texas?
This is just the Texas data.
Do you know the cumulative for all the states that you serve?
We have the most robust data for Texas. That's where we've operated the longest. We've, several of the states that you're seeing on the website, we've only been operating in for a couple of years. We wouldn't have 5-year completer data yet, but we've been operating in Texas for.
So you've been in operation, my understanding was 21 years, right?
In Texas.
Okay, in Texas. What other states have you been in longer than 5 years?
So Louisiana and Nevada, we've been in longer than 5 years. I don't have the percentage for Louisiana. I'm happy to find it from the Board of Regents. They hold that data for us. Last time I checked, we were exceeding alt route rates on the 3 and 5 year.
I'm gonna just have a couple of comments. As someone who was an option 6 candidate and who left corporate job to move into education, I did my clinical hours while I was out on maternity leave and had someone watch my 1-week-old son so that I could run back and forth to a school to get my clinical hours. So I can definitely appreciate that burden that was going along with that. My family, we didn't have the opportunity for me to just quit or call in sick or whatever. And I think that is a burden for people who are looking to change careers. I think about my program that I went through with my Option 6 program, and there were 4 of us that were kind of in that cohort at that time. Only 3/4 of us completed the program. Only half of us are still in teaching. So, small numbers compared to some others, but that's also kind of lining up with what I'm hearing presented. I think about 3 student teachers that I currently have close access with, and 2 are not wanting to go into teaching anymore. They're going through the final semester to get their degree, but they've decided they don't want to be in teaching anymore. So only a third of that, that cohort is staying. I think that leads to a bigger problem beyond just the teacher prep, right? And I don't have the answers to it. But I do think that looking to attract professionals outside of the field, and I would love to know what kind of numbers you have of not just people who have been in business, but maybe have leadership experience in business, because I think that lends itself to some of that employee management, classroom management. It's different, but it still lends itself to some of those same skills. What numbers you have about that, because I do think we're going to have to look for innovative ways going forward to reach some of those people that may be coming from other fields.
I don't think we have data that specific. That's a great thing for us to look at. We do have leadership programs in Texas and Louisiana where we're moving our teachers up to principals, but that is a great thing that I think we should probably investigate, and thank you for that feedback.
Are there any other questions or comments at this time?
I just have one.
Yes.
And we've used the term completer quite a bit. Okay, so what does that specifically and clearly mean in the form of iTeach? Is there a degree offered at the end? Who does that degree come from? What is a completer in your program?
So a
actually
completer, as defined in Texas, it's a little different from a Title II completer, but our completers are individuals who have completed all of the state requirements, which are coursework completed, content and pedagogy test passed, and a successful field experience completed. So they've completed all of our coursework, they passed state mandated tests, and they've successfully completed their field experience. When at that point, we recommend them for their standard certificate, and they are identified as a program completer.
That is different in different states. Some states so in Texas, it's almost aligned to when the standard certificate's issued. Those almost are aligned identically, that our completers could also be individuals who earn their standard license. In other states, Nevada and Florida come to mind off the top of my head. There is completion for a professional license that's done outside of the program. And so our completer data would not one-to-one correlate on the date of a professional license being issued.
And so in effect, the completion requirements are set by the state's requirements, right? What the requirements are in that route and varies, but across the board, we're a certificate-only program, right? Because we are not an institution of higher education. They're not earning a degree. But as mentioned in our in the summary there, we do have partnerships with institutions of higher education that recognize our program completers completed coursework for up to 12 credit hours towards a graduate degree, so that they can go on and earn a degree in education if that's something that they are interested in doing. But yes, we're measuring our completers by the package of requirements that the state has set. And as we talk about different states, you can see we have a lot of experience in ensuring that our program is tailored specifically to that state and their requirements.
Cassie, as far as, ranks, rank 1, rank 2, how does this play into that? Do you have any?
So rank is defined in statute as well. With a bachelor's degree, you're going to be looking at rank 3. This is not a master's level program, so they're not eligible. Individuals that are wanting the master's for the higher rank, they're going to hopefully go option 6 to get that and obtain that.
So if you do iTeach only, you'll be rank 3 your whole career.
Yes. Now, there's the potential if you come in with a higher level, a doctorate degree, for that to go into consideration to be a higher rank.
But you can earn the rank.
You can earn the rank through a different program, but through the, yes.
But that's still an extra cost. So an iTeach completer has spent the full cost of the iTeach program. If they're coming in with just a bachelor's degree, like out of an option 6, you had your bachelor's degree, you're getting a master's degree. So you're really, once you're done, you're getting that rank 2 for your return investment.
And that is, specific to that option 6 program,
Correct.
which
Yeah.
again, they
Oh,
don't
no,
qualify.
no fault of that. Yeah, I'm just thinking of,
That's up to the candidate too.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that may not be
Yeah.
something they wish.
but this coursework as things are currently written could not count as one of those,
There is potential, it sounds like, for the partnerships, depending on what universities are able to award for prior learning and prior credit. And I know that we've had a lengthy discussion here and over multiple meetings. So there are a few points that I want to touch on based on some of the board's discussion here. I think one of the holdups is the attempt to compare the iTeach institution to our traditional college and university programs. And that is not what iTeach is. They are CAPE accredited, but they do not have the same requirements on them as the colleges and universities that are offering degree programs that are going a traditional route, an option 6 program. And part of that is what the requirements are of option 7 itself. When we started looking at the requirements around option 7 to promote it so that it would be utilized more going forward, when the board started that in 2018, there was discussion around the requirement of, can we require that this is only available to colleges and universities, which option 6, traditional, absolutely, the board was able to require that. The way that option 7 is written, that was not a requirement. It uses the language of provider, coupled with additional statutory language in KRS 161028, which tasks the board with approving, promoting the development of one or more innovative, non-traditional, or alternative teacher preparation programs through, among those is private contractors, and then also 161030, which tasks the board with approving the curricula of any training program by a private contractor. So it was, contemplated by the legislature for that to occur here. With option 7, what you are debating right now is initial approval. Initial approval can only be for a period of 2 years. That is the maximum that you are able to approve them today, if that is your choice, is for 2 years, at which time they would have to provide additional documentation and come before the board to show that program quality, those partnerships as well, and the data specific to Kentucky. If you choose not to approve them today, then the program is denied. You would have to, point to that deficiency again with the program in line with the requirements that you have in place.
Is there any other questions or comments? Well, I will need a motion for this action item. Is there a motion on the floor? My wait time as a teacher is impeccable. So I don't know if you know that or not.
I'd like to make a motion to deny the application for the option 7 program from iTeach.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. The motion before the board is to deny option 7 institute proposal for iTeach. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I think what gives me great pause was the statement by the president of CACTI. Because we deal with so many partnerships. I mean, partnership's the word of the day, right? We have partnership with the legislature. We have partnership with our institutions. And I certainly don't want to turn our back on them. This is just a tough decision, and I think that, that if the universities aren't on board with it, and I know that they don't have to be, but that's what's given me great pause.
Can I? Okay. Sorry. Okay. Here. So where I'm having a hard time with just our role as board members here is, I think we all have understandable concerns, right? I think that's super evident from last board meeting and this board's meeting. But I am worried about, I think to Ms. Trueblood's point, like, this is an approved option 7 pathway, and they've gone through the steps and it's met the conditions. And I think it's fair that we're all saying on public record that, like, we don't love this as maybe as not, but I'm worried. But I'm also like I'm prepared at this point to abstain if the motion to deny goes forward, because I'm just not comfortable on either side. But I think I tend to almost feel like I maybe need clarification on what grounds we would have to deny.
This board isn't a rubber stamp.
No,
just because they come,
appreciate that.
just because you meet the criteria, there's an assessment of
But
quality.
are we saying no to iTeach or saying no to, like, the option 7? That's what I'm having a hard time with.
Well, we have approved other option 7 programs.
Agreed. So, and the difference was the partnership. I think it's clear my concerns that I've shared. So I'm just making sure that in our capacity as this board, that we're doing what we're
And I want to join what you're saying, because I guess excuse me, whenever I, as a teacher, tell a student, this is not what we're looking for, but you're close. The second part is, what do I need to do in addition to get it right? So when I come back as a student, what have I done to get it right? So it sounds like what we're saying is have some more local partnerships with our universities that are willing to work with iTeach the next time you present. Is that the message that we're sending? That's the difference between this option 7 and others? I'm asking for clarification.
The problem with saying that is not what is in your guidelines and what is in your regulation. That is the issue there of, are we holding them to the standard of they need to be a Kentucky college or university, or they have to partner with one? And that is not the requirement. So if that is what we're saying, then that is problematic. Now, if you have additional concerns and things that you are saying that they are not currently meeting, that you would want them to meet, then that now would be the time to say that and to point to where that is, what it is within the guidelines or the regulation that they're not meeting.
Well, if I
Dr.
could,
Ellis
I
looks like
just want to offer that I'm not necessarily looking for partnership to automatically include a higher ed institution. I'm looking for partnership to include named actual relationships with school district partners where the context that we value so very much in educator preparation and in good teaching is evident. And that would be the partnership request. I mean, and obviously Amy and I and all of our higher ed partners very much support and appreciate the partnership that we have with any number of board members and districts. But I think in this case, my question around what does partnership mean, I don't want it to simply be a financial arrangement. This is not just about scholarshiping. This is about being able to pick up the phone and know the actual context of the actual school that deals with flooding in a way that no other school in that district deals with flooding, and what does they impact on families and those sorts of things. Those are the levels of partnerships that the previous option 7 programs have currently and had at the time that the board voted on them.
Going back to kind of what CJ said, being a classroom teacher and every year, every summer, sitting in with my principal, interviewing potential candidates because we're having a lot of high turnover. And, my school district is left, where we're not wanting to hire candidates that are qualified or maybe not qualified, and they've done traditional routes. They've done option 6, so, I'm kind of can see both sides. It's like, and maybe I don't understand the depth of this, but like Cassie said, that kind of 2-year policy, what's the harm of giving this a shot or giving students a different opportunity? And after 2 years, if the data doesn't back it up or it's not there, then it doesn't move forward. But maybe that opens up the door for a few potential good teachers that, were prohibited from the other traditional means. If that makes sense at all.
What is the provision to revisit an approval? Do we have to wait for their reaccreditation to come up before it comes before us again?
So under the regulation, any approval granted by the EPSB shall specify the period of approval of the institute, which shall not exceed 2 years for initial approval. After that, they can apply for continuance of a program approval for an additional period of time not to exceed 7 years. The request for continuance shall specify any changes in program components that have occurred since the institute received prior approval that are planned. The request shall provide specific examples of demonstrating program quality as established in this section and the application required by the regulation. Statistical information related to teacher retention for all prior candidates, which is a little difficult with a 2-year turnaround there, but it is. That would also happen when you are extending beyond the initial 7 years as well. So with these program approvals, again, the initial one can be for a maximum of 2 years. Then they can apply to extend that out. Once it's approved, it's not a continuous approval. It does have to keep going through the process every 7 years.
So I will say, I feel like they have met the requirements of everything we have asked. And I definitely hear the concerns. Please don't hear me say that. I do hear what you're saying. But I also agree with Meredith that, if we can say in 2 years we're seeing some progress or we're seeing these numbers, that it's not a 7-year initial sort of stamp, it's for 2 years, and come back and to have the conversation. But I just am on my person, this is just me voting individually, I can't see a reason to deny this option 7.
Okay, I know I'm not a professor and I'm not, I don't hold a PhD, any of that, but isn't this another option? Isn't this supposed to be another option to have teachers in our classroom? Look at the options we've already got.
This is one of the options you already have.
That's what I'm saying. And we can find something wrong with probably 3 or 4 of them. I'm just saying in my mind. I just look at it as another chance, another option for a person to change their life and to maybe teach. It's just the way I feel.
Is there any other discussion? Mr. Fryer?
I think my mic's getting cut off here in a second. No, look, let's say the best case it's not a bad problem to have, it'd be good. Let's say all of a sudden this is approved and, I teach and again, my motto in my classroom is assume best intentions, right? I think everyone here has the goal of, getting qualified, effective educators in front of students, right? I hope that's, and I don't think there'd be anyone in this room or who's watching who has a different viewpoint, right? So in that model, let's say, you're approved, right? Everyone's like, oh my gosh, this great option. I'm working this job. This is taking down barriers financially. So all that's great. But if all of a sudden we have this huge influx, and again, I know this is like half glass full, right? That's like all the people come flooding. Like I teach Kentucky, right now I'm going to be a teacher, right? I just know our higher ed partners are doing such amazing work in our Commonwealth. And I would and again, with a small 2-year window, I think we'll be able to reevaluate. But I'm just hoping that this addition doesn't hurt our higher ed friends. And I am genuinely, I'll speak on behalf of Dr. Lingo and Dr. Murphy to kind of maybe share where their concerns coming from. It's not that you guys are bringing a negative thing to the table, but they're already I don't know. I'm worried about our higher ed partners and how this potentially has a ripple effect to affect them. If someone wants to jump in there, I think that's where your guys' natural concern is partly coming from, at least.
Yeah, I think, well, and I think it's been helpful to get the additional information. So I do think that's helpful. And I feel like procedurally we're met the criteria, but I also feel the ping of pain to where, we always talk about what we want in the classroom, and then we spend the rest of the day with some really poor decisions that are made by folks who don't know better. And so I think about the quality piece on that, and partnership is the name of the game, but it is about knowing our kids. It is about cultural relevance of each region in our state. It is knowing how to handle the classroom when you've watched a few videos. And I know that's one other options too. That's concerning. That's a problem because we don't teach distantly. We teach humans. And it's hard and it's messy. And so I think it's a really hard pill to swallow. My hope is that it's not just producing people, but it's producing true educators who are prepared and who can meet the needs of kids who are already struggling. We get, being in the session, we get a lot of flack as educators for not having students where they need to be, for complaining about things that are a piece of the puzzle, and we don't have to build the rest of the budget and all those things. But it's also a really hard pill to swallow to have legislation that lowers the expectation of our substitutes who take on jobs that they don't even know what they're walking into. We can't do emergency certification for special education. Totally understand that, but also understand the onus. And then it just feels like it's coming at all angles. And I think it's just a lot to take in when we're also trying to build up the profession and not only recruit, but retain, to talk about what a fabulous career this is. But it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for everybody. If it was, it'd be a job. It's not a job, it's a career. And so I think it's just a hard decision. My thing is that whatever we take on, I expect real clear data, and not just participants, but successful completers, people who are in the field, who are working with the districts, who are having mentors. I expect those coaches to be right there next to those teachers. It's hard, especially when you've had no human contact or a cadre, right, to build with and grow your kids up with and figure out how to do things. I just think there's components, the quality components, that maybe we need to reevaluate option 7 criteria. Again, I know we just did it, Cassie, I know, but it really makes me wonder about what is it we really want to achieve and still honor what the statute says that is required, and really look at, because I think that's where we're getting angst if it's not meeting an expectation that maybe we did not verbalize well enough, and you don't know till you know, and what the criteria are. And that's not iTeach's problem. That's, something for us to think through as we are pounding with more need and more challenges, right? Because the kids aren't easier, they're struggling more. So we have this perfect storm. I just think it's a lot to take in. And so that's what comes to mind, and I completely respect that.
I think your point, Dr. Ellis, along with Dr. Murphy's, is that if it was a denial today, it's a denial for lack of educational partnerships, and those educational partnerships being within the state. And so those being, and not saying specifically that it has to be a higher ed, but and I think to Ms. Gunn's point as well of if the denial motion today, because we do have to vote on that motion because we have a motion and a second. If the motion to deny is approved, then your feedback is that this is a denial to establish partnerships within the state with the districts to come forward and do that. On the other side of that is if we are saying we are approving today and giving 2 years to establish those partnerships, because to an extent you have to have those partnerships to issue the temporary provisional and have the mentoring occurring while in the district. So there's 2 ways for you to approach that.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. As I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I'm thinking, oh, wow, I can refer, my nephew to this, or other people who have not who don't have degrees or who talk about changing degrees. It sounds like a really great program, and I'm hearing everyone's concerns. I like the fact that it could be another option. But my question would be, I know if it's approved, it could take monies, because I'm going to talk on the financial end. It could take monies out of the pockets of the traditional university programs, because if I had to go back, I'm looking for someone who can finance my education. And if this is a free education, I would probably go that route. Because, who wants to be in debt after 8 years of college? So that's a good thing. So there's some positives and also some not so good, strengths. But I guess my question too is, if this was approved and word gets out there, free education, you can still work, you can still this, are you all equipped to handle a flood of folks coming to you all because they see that this is an opportunity for a free education?
Just a small note of clarification. So it's free / $25 to start.
Well, $250.
I'm clarifying. We're saying that you can access the course. Like I'm looking at the website, right? Like that initial, hence the dropout numbers, because people might not invest the financial piece, start it, realize not for me, which I appreciate that thing. But at the end of the day,
they still got to pay.
Yes, without getting it.
Because I heard her say free, then I heard her say like a $250
they can kind of start
application or something.
Yes.
In the beginning.
Yes.
We have kept our costs low because I don't want anyone to have to go in debt to become a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So we keep our costs low at $4,300 for the entire program, and that's paid in monthly installments once they're hired.
Okay.
So if they don't get hired, then they can just not be out the money.
Any other discussion? All right. So just want to clarify, we are going to do a roll call vote on this one. And the motion before the board is right now to deny option 7 institute proposal for iTeach. If you vote in favor of this, you are saying that you are denying iTeach. If you vote in opposition or vote nay, you are saying you are against the denial of this proposal. I don't think that is very clear, but hopefully you understood what I meant.
Say that again.
Looking at some faces across
Say
the
that
room.
again.
We have to vote on this motion.
Oh, we have to do this one and then.
And then if it fails, we would vote
Okay,
yes.
if this motion fails, you have the ability to
make another
have a second motion to approve.
So if we don't deny, I'm sorry.
So we have to do out on the
So if we don't deny this, but we can make another motion or partnership development, am I correct on that or am I off on that?
So
I'm sorry.
So the first motion, the motion that you're voting on now, is the motion to deny. If you are voting yes to the motion to deny, then that counts as yes, we are denying. If you vote no, then you're voting against the motion.
Right.
If the motion passes, then the program is denied with the indication that before coming back, we need additional data on partnerships within the state. If the motion fails, then the chair has the ability to open the floor to a new motion to approve for an initial 2-year approval while developing partnerships. So those are the two options that you are. But because there is such a division at the moment, the chair has called for a roll call vote. Is there additional?
Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
So we are on the
no.
first, could be on the first and only, I don't know, but we are on the first motion there. All right, Ms. Chester, will you please call the roll?
Amanda Ellis,
Yes.
Diane Berry,
It's so confusing what you said.
yes. Okay. Elijah Edwards,
Yes.
CJ Fryer,
No.
Kathy Gunn,
No.
Priscilla Keller,
No.
Amy Lingo,
Yes.
Jacqueline Mayfield,
Yes.
Corinne Murphy,
Yes.
Meredith Pittman,
No.
Lisa Rosinski,
No.
Amber Snell,
No.
Chair Mitchell.
No. So I believe that was 6 yeses and 7 nos. And the motion is defeated. I will open the floor if there are any other motions that anyone would like to make.
I make a motion to approve iTeach's application.
Okay.
Is that for the initial?
With the
For the
provision.
initial, just approve it straight up as it is, with no provisions of any kind. My motion is just approve it for the initial 2 years.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Ms. Berry, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Right. The motion before the board is to approve option 7 institute proposal for iTeach. Is there any discussion?
So
She didn't put it in.
does that capture what Amanda was saying or not?
No.
Did not.
It doesn't.
So the motion before the board is to approve the program for 2 years. In that 2 years, they would have to come back and show data. If you would like to amend the motion to say specifically within that 2 years, we want to see documented partnership with local districts, you can do that as well.
It's more just making it very clear that in the approval, that those were the expectations the board had.
So, yeah.
It's not really prohibiting that from,
It's not prohibiting them from operating. It is making clear what is expected for the application for renewal.
which I think would honor a lengthy
Everybody's
discussion
wish.
we've had over 2 board meetings.
And we support that.
Great. Would you be willing, Captain Rosinski, to?
So I would amend the motion to require iTeach to produce, is there a number of partnerships, good faith effort of partnerships? That's where I struggle
I
is,
understand that.
what do we, like
I
what,
understand.
5, 10, 15, 2, like what do I say there?
Reasonable efforts?
So, well, I think it's going to be that you are specifically requesting that they demonstrate those effective partnerships with local districts. You haven't done one before where you've set a specific
Right.
number. I think right now, because the number is 0, you're looking for something
I-
additional with that.
For me, because I understand that point 100%. I think for me, that verbiage being attached to this would make it clear that as that 2-year period goes by and we collect all this data, we've got clear a motion that was stated in a certain way to say that this was our intention of a board, that they've taken those steps over that time. So I don't know that a certain number needs to be attached as much as just with the request of the board that partnerships are developed and strengthened.
I mean, if I could offer, the challenge right now is the numbers. I don't want to hear about 150 partnerships. I want to hear about substantive partnerships that address district context and address the curriculum that is offered and the expectations of the students within that district context.
So is Dr. Murphy looking to make a motion
I am.
to amend the motion?
That is my motion to amend the motion.
As always, we are very grateful to Megan Osborne for recording our meetings.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to amend the motion. And can you just say it one more time for us?
I will try.
Yes, please.
Would like to amend Captain Rosinski's motion to include the expectation of demonstrable substantive partnerships that address context within the pedagogical space so that students are assessed on their incorporation of district need, classroom need, and school context within their programs.
Okay. Is there a second for the?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve the amendment just spoken by Dr. Murphy.
Thank you for not making
Um,
me repeat that.
And is there any discussion on the amendments?
Does that have to be a documented MOA or MOU between iTeach and the district? Like that says, here are the things that we're going to do. I mean, that, when you say, think about reasonable effort or good faith, whatever, that's really the only way in which you can really assess to see if that's occurred.
I think that's what they would be tasked with showing, is how they are demonstrating that through.
And the board would have to approve, I mean, not
Yes.
this board, the school board would have to approve that. Yeah.
Yes.
So a point of order. Am I still able to withdraw my motion now that it's been amended and seconded?
We have to vote on.
We would vote on the
amendment.
amendment, and then we already have a second to your motion as well.
Okay.
So it would be,
Okay.
Discussion.
Trying
on
to
the
make it as clean as
amendments.
possible.
That's what we're on
Can
right
my
now.
discussion include a quick address of the guests or no?
a
I don't
quick
know.
address of the.
Like, can I ask can this discussion
I'll
include
allow
it?
it, yeah.
Are you sure?
Sure. Yeah.
I know you just emphatically said that you're on board as we kind of were cleaning up that language. Now that we've heard Dr. Murphy's more direct language and we're talking about, remind me the acronym again, the
MOA,
MO
memorandum
the
of
memorandum.
understanding or
Yeah,
agreement.
thank you. Great.
What's enough?
Do you still emphatically stand
What's enough?
behind that? Like, yes, we're on board with that, or do you have concerns? I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
I
want
would
us
love
be a
to
healthy
know.
partnership, right?
I appreciate that. I would
Yes.
love to know more what that actually
It's getting messy.
looks like and how that would be measured.
Sure.
We've already reached out to several districts and open conversations. We have no issues, and we were already doing that path. So, forming partnerships with districts, there's absolutely no hesitation on our end. Understanding exactly the measurement we would have on the amended motion, it doesn't sound undoable.
Okay.
But I would love to know more, maybe post approval,
Yeah.
fingers crossed, of what
Sure.
we can do to make sure we exceed that bar.
Okay. Any other discussion on the amendment?
I just, for the record, just want to state that I understand what we're trying to do as a board, and I also understand what you're trying to do for educators and for potential educators and for our classroom buildings. And when we see you again, if this passes, the intent of what I believe we are trying to do is say, come to Kentucky, learn about Kentuckians, learn about our educational needs, challenges, and the uniqueness that we have, and do something with that. That's what I believe. And I don't know how you put that in motion, but that is my vote today will be reflective of that intent.
So any following discussion on the amendment? All those in favor, I think we can do this with the amendment and not have to do a roll call on the amendment portion. All those in favor of the amendment as spoken by Dr. Murphy, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Okay. The motion of the amendment passes. So now on the floor is, we already had a second, so discussion on the acceptance of Option 7 Institute proposal iTeach for a 2-year initial approval, including the amendments that we just passed, is on the floor. Is there any discussion?
I guess I'm going to say that we earlier today just had a mandate that we all agree means we need more teachers, more certified teachers, teachers who hopefully know what they're doing and can best serve our students in a strong capacity where they don't have to come before our board for making egregious errors. And now we have a program in front of us that may be different than what we're used to, but may help us to fill some of that need. And based on the current statute as written, that we have to follow the law, I don't personally see how we cannot go forward, even if it feels uncomfortable.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
I would just ask for a roll call vote, Chair.
Thank you. At this time, the motion before the board is to approve Option 7 Institute proposal for the 2-year initial approval with including the amendments. Ms. Chesser, can you please call the roll?
Amanda Ellis.
Yes.
Diane Barry.
Yes.
Elijah Edwards.
Abstain.
CJ Fryer.
Yes.
Kathy Gunn.
Yes.
Priscilla Keller.
Yes.
Amy Lingo.
No.
Jacqueline Mayfield.
Yes.
Corinne Murphy.
Abstain.
Meredith Pittman.
Yes.
Lisa Rosinski.
Yes.
Amber Snell.
Yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Yes. I have 10 yeses, 1 no, and 2 abstains. So the motion passes there. Thank you all for coming and present. Thank you all as a board for the conversations that need to be had. And I appreciate that, even though sometimes we're divided, and that is
Nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. So I am going to request a 5-minute break because I need to use the restroom. I'll just be honest with you. So 5 minutes is at 12:35. We will try to stay right at that 5 minutes, and then we'll come back for waivers. We are coming back.
And I will always have your facts on the higher ed side of things.
All right, we are back in session. Thank you for having the break there. Dr. Murphy did ask if she could just speak briefly before
Yes.
we move on, and so I'm going to allow that.
I would, and thank you, Chair Mitchell. I would have liked to say this prior to the break, but the break was absolutely necessary for all humans. So, so there we are. But we are still on the record. We still are on open, and we are still recording. So I just wanted to give a little context to the board that was not necessarily a function of that particular motion, but I think it's good information for all of you to have. And so within the context of business models, higher ed institutions work on, for the most part, a nonprofit model, especially our public higher education. And in Kentucky, that means that we are held to standards and restrictions on our tuition and how we're able to engage our models. And so as an example, WKU actually has a budget that is $5 million per year less than it was 6 years ago. And if you do the math on that, given inflation, that is actually a miracle. What we just experienced and what we may experience are for-profit models of education certification. And yes, it is different. Obviously, our regulations and our guidelines related to those do not address the business model surrounding teacher certification. But our certifications do live in a business structure. You should know that as a comparison point, you can complete the master's and rank 2 at WKU for less than $3,500 because of the partnerships and the extensive interactions that we have with our school districts. That's a master's degree and a rank. And so I offer this so that, one, you have a good understanding. And please know, I appreciate how challenging it is to look at a set of regulations and say, we have to vote this way because they've met the benchmark. My offer to you is that we really need to consider those benchmarks. We need to consider what we say yes to, and our error, if we wanted to move in that direction, was 4 years ago when we approved a set of guidelines that said or instead of must or may. And so we have to be very careful and very intentional around protecting what we want to protect. And so I offer all of that because you all don't have that every day to know that CPE, no offense, Amanda, limits tuition going up by 2% for any, well, at least the publics. I don't know if they do that to you, Amy, but yeah. I mean, so it's a challenging model in which to operate, and we are doing what we can to be financially responsible within that while still maintaining quality. And so that's why I particularly pieced on that whole partnership.
And there's a performance funding model that indicates how universities can capitalize and get more resources if they meet certain criteria. Currently, graduates of teacher ed programs don't factor into that model. Engineering does. There are other healthcare fields that do, and that allows resources to be directed into those areas of study. So I think we've talked about, and Dr. Thompson has been a huge supporter of institutions and trying to figure out how do we capture some of that educator preparation data. But as you all know, when we're struggling with enrollment, much of our tuition, our budget is based on tuition. And when that tuition isn't there, while we are having to travel and invest in these partnerships that are very Kentucky specific, it's important. So I would just say it's a lot more than you can't do it cheaper. Sometimes cheaper isn't necessarily the best approach.
And the last thing I'll say is that our institutions of higher education are now under different kinds of pressures as well. And so we all know that there's DEI legislation that's going to impact our operations. And there is not that same level of scrutiny or impact on for-profit models of certification. And so we have to be very careful about how we move forward within that space and as we consider those things. I don't know how those House bills will impact an alternative route. That's probably a question we're going to need to ask over time. But there's a lot happening here, and honestly, questions today were really about quality, but I also appreciate the angst that everybody has as we look at how do we need to be innovative. It doesn't take the pressure off institutions to be innovative. And I think if you look at our Grow Your Own programs, you're seeing that innovation happen. You're just seeing it happen in a nonprofit space as opposed to a for-profit commercialized space.
Yeah, and I'll just, if that's okay,
Yes.
that's exactly the conversation we were just having about just processing this is really, we need to reevaluate the things that we do have control over, which are the regulations, and ensuring, obviously, with Cassie's wisdom that she always guides us with and patience, that it's aligned to statute, but that we do really think about our criteria, because I think my angst today is our criteria are not rigorous enough, not for what we expect, not where it's unrealistic, but where we were struggling, because it's what we had put in writing. And so things change, and exactly to Dean Murphy's point, things are changing very rapidly for our field and for education preparation programs faster than we can keep up. And so I think we have to be very nimble and sensitive to that, so we don't just sit on what we've had, but we have to look ahead for how we plan accordingly to preserve quality in our field for all of us who are invested in that. So I completely agree and hear the concern.
And this is absolutely a route that the board has struggled with. I mean, you can see that in these discussions. We started to revamp it in 2018, 2019, and then at some point during the COVID years was when we once again opened and changed the guidelines again at that time with the stakeholder feedback. So this would be another reopening of the guidelines, which is absolutely fine. We do struggle with doing that when people are in the process. If we continue to change the target and move the target, that's problematic. But looking forward, I think there was a lot of discussion, especially around partnerships. I mean, yes, we do have that struggle of they're not a Kentucky college or university, and we have certain expectations and quality that we have from our colleges and universities. But then also the piece that I think the board really landed on and focused on today was that educational partnership with the districts within the state. And so, yes, that is something we can, I don't know if another task force, Dr. Lingo, if you want to lead up a second task force with that, I'm not, again, only the chair can make those requirements, but I think we can absolutely have some conversations and maybe bring that back as a information item to talk about in April or June, depending on how our agendas going forward. not to kick us on to the next topic, but
And I would just like to say that I heard what you have to say, and I struggled with muddying it so much. That's why I made the motion straight clear, right? Just we are going to do it up or down on the motion and then give them 2 years to see what they can produce. Also, as an administrator, applicants come to us in a lot of different routes, right? Occupation-based, military, option 6. And our function is to certify them to be able to get those jobs in this role. And then equally important in that partnership are our school districts and our administrators to make sure that we're doing what we need to be doing to help grow them once they're in. And if not, we always have that option to non-renew. So I empathize and sympathize and really struggled. And this is, this one applicant has been in front of us since the fall of 21. We've been talking about this one applicant for the fall of 21. And so ultimately I decided to see what they can produce. And
I hope that is something that we can look at option 7 in the future. And I don't think it's even so that we're not just pinpointing one option. I'm okay if we just have an update of all of the options. And I think that's just good for us to, as a board, to refamiliarize ourselves with all of the alternative route options that we have. So yes, I would like for us to see that here moving forward. All right. I don't know how this became, it's not a closed session. I know this, but they all left. I didn't want to hear about the waivers here.
Short break, and we're like.
All right, the board is now ready to review waiver request. KRS 161028-1N provides that the board has the authority to waive its administrative regulations when a request is submitted by an applicant for certification, a post-secondary institution, or a superintendent of a local school district. When requesting a waiver, the requesting party must submit to the board a written request along with the appropriate justification for the waiver. EPSB staff reviewed the waivers with the EPSB's waiver committee during an open meeting immediately prior to this meeting, and the waiver committee formulated recommendations. Brandon Harrod and Sharon Salzman will present the waiver request to the full board, and the waiver committee Chair Kathy Gunn will present the committee's recommendation for final action, starting with waiver A.
So this one is to waive emergency certificate requirements, and this is for Powell County. They've been unsuccessful in finding qualified teachers for multiple positions, but this one is for an elementary school position. The candidate has been conditionally admitted into an MAT program with stipulations to increase the GPA. The candidate does hold a bachelor's degree in human services, and the district is requesting that the EPSB waive the required GPA and issue an emergency certificate.
Thank you, Ms. Gunn.
It starts on page 118, and the waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the Powell County Schools, and the committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant waiver A.
Thank you. At this time, I will need a motion.
Motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And so the motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Powell County Schools. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next is waiver B.
This one is to waive out-of-state recency requirements, and this is for Kimberly Hayes. She has taught in Tennessee for over 20 years, is a level 5 teacher, and holds a valid Tennessee license. She recently moved to Kentucky and accepted a position at an elementary school. She completed her teacher prep program in 2001 and has not completed any graduate credit within the past 5 years. She states that she plans to take the letters by Lexia classes and will have more than 6 hours, but it is a 2-year program and not available to start until spring. She requests that the EPSB consider her previous experience from out of state to waive the out of state recency requirement for 6 graduate hours and issue her the full 5-year Kentucky certificate.
Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the EPSB grant waiver B.
Thank you. At this time, I will need a motion.
Motion to approve waiver B.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Edwards, I think I heard first. Motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4080, request to waive out-of-state recency requirement for Kimberly Hayes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay, and the motion passes. Next is waiver C.
So this one is similar to the last one. This one is for Stacy Ricketts. She taught for 1 year in Indiana. She was hired by Jefferson County Public Schools Adult Education, where she taught multiple subjects over 13 years to hundreds of students. She completed her teacher preparation program in 2003, passed the Kentucky Praxis exams in fall of 2023, and she requests that the EPSB consider her previous experience to waive the out-of-state recency requirements of 6 graduate hours and issue her the full 5-year certificate.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn?
After some discussion about the adult eds, the waiver committee reviewed the waiver request supporting documentation, and the committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends the EPSB grant waiver C.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to grant waiver C.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 4080, request to waive out-of-state recency requirement for Stacy Ricketts. Is there any discussion?
My only issue with that in the waiver committee is that they had 1 year of teaching in a certified position and then have been doing adult education for ever since. And so we'll be issuing a 5-year certificate to someone who initially taught for 1 year. If we approve the waiver, I understand that that is in line with similar decisions that we have made in the past, but that's just something that I wanted to mention that I struggled with as I reviewed that one.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
And
Nay.
Thank you. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver D.
This is to waive the 10-year recency requirements, and this was submitted by Jessamine County on behalf of Tasha Crane. According to the district, Ms. Crane took the English Language Arts Praxis 2 in 2011, completed all the certification requirements in 2013, but the university failed to recommend her for the English Language Arts certification. She was recommended and received certification for social studies. She did not realize this issue until this year. So Jessamine County Schools and Ms. Crane are asking the EPSB to allow her previous English Language Arts Praxis 2 score to qualify for issuance of the certificate.
Thank you. Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the Jasmine County Schools, and the committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that you check your certifications annually and grant the waiver.
So the university just failed to do that? Do we have documentation that the university really did fail to do that, or was there something else that went on, like wasn't successful in her student teaching placement?
No, I think with this one, and Sharon, correct me if I'm wrong, because we've seen this before, where they qualified for one recommendation before they had completed the additional testing. And so instead of then recommending them when they had met the requirements, they didn't go back and add the additional recommendation. So as waiver committee chair said, check your certification. We are going to record her and do a nice little blast of that.
Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Is there a second? Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 6010, request to waive 10-year recency requirement for praxis for Tasha Crane. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Next is waiver E.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. This is a alternative student teaching placement request that was submitted by Morehead State University on the behalf of Lindsay Blevins. Lindsay Blevins is a art education student at Morehead State University. They are seeking a split placement for this individual. They are having a difficulty finding a placement in the elementary placement, so they were requesting a middle school placement instead.
Okay. Scott?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Morehead State University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the waiver committee recommends EPSB grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Berry. Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Lindsay Blevins. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Moving to waiver F.
Waiver F, very similar. It was submitted by Morehead State University on behalf of Grace Douglas. They were having a difficulty finding an elementary placement in the art field, and so they're requesting a middle school placement as well.
Ms. Gunn?
The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends the EPSB grant waiver F.
Thank you. At this time, I'll need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you, Captain Rosinski. Thank you, Ms. Snell, for the second. Motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Grace Douglas. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion passes. Next, we have waiver G.
Waiver G was submitted by Morehead State University on behalf of Corin Edwin. Again, it's a art education student that is trying to seek a placement at the elementary level, and they're having difficulty and are requesting a middle school placement.
Ms. Gunn?
The waiver committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends the EPSB grant the waiver.
At this time, I'll need a motion.
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Keller. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 alternative student teaching placement request for Corin Edwin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Last, we have waiver H.
Waiver H is a little different. This was submitted by Morehead State University on behalf of Kayla Prater. They're wanting to waive a portion of the cooperating teacher eligibility requirements for the 3-year requirement. This teacher has 2.5 years. It's an LBD placement. They're having difficulty finding an LBD placement in this area. This individual has a letter from the superintendent of Morgan County Schools speaking to her exceptional work as a teacher, and they also noted that she has 109 hours of professional training to go with her 2.5 years.
We're on page 148. The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by Morehead State University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that EPSB grant the waiver.
Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. Is there a
Second.
Thank you. I think, is that you, Lisa? I'm sorry, I couldn't tell.
Sorry.
Captain Rosinski. The motion before the board is to approve 16 KAR 5040 request to waive cooperating teacher eligibility requirements for Kayla Prater. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I will now open the floor to any board members for board comments. Does anyone wish or have anything they wish to share? No one? I mean, this is a sharing group today, so I thought we might.
We've already
I feel like
shared.
I've used my time.
Already shared enough.
I'll just echo the comments that we do need judges for the Ed Rising State Conference. I know I did watch in the car on the way. Right,
Judges
safely.
for what?
But for the Educators Rising State Conference, March 6th. So if you've got friends, staff members, retired teachers are great people for that. Even pre-service teachers. We've had pre-service teachers serve as really excellent judges. So if there's a pre-service teacher out there who's got availability that day, we need them. It's going to be great.
Any other discussion? I mean, since it is on the record, I can't go a meeting without expressing the need for funding for KTIP. So I know that all the representatives and senators are listening in on this meeting, I'm sure right now. And I just want to express that that is still time to get that into the budget to help with teacher retention. And so we are looking forward to that to be added, and we will be a great resource if needed.
I would like to add one thing. It is CTE month, so
yes.
all of your career and technical educators, we're celebrating this month, and it's a very small component of certified educators in the state, but they're my world, so I just want to give them a shout out.
Absolutely.
And sort of along the lines of mentioning KTIP and what we hope the legislature focuses on, looking at those working conditions survey as for other ways to try to address the teacher shortage and other issues that are at play.
Absolutely.
I will just say, we've had a rough week at our school, a student death. And so just thankful for all that you all do in the EPPs to prepare student teachers and teachers. There are just some things that you cannot experience until you're in a classroom. And just grateful for us continuing to try and raise the expectations for this career that not everyone can have as a job, right? And even through the not so great things we see in closed session, knowing that there are caring educators out there who continue to come in every single day and pour into their students. That's what this profession's about. So thank you for all the hard work we all do for that.
And I know you all know what's happened in Nelson County. We lost 2 students last week. One at a very young age and both of them. One was a junior at the high school and one was in the 5th grade. And those circumstances is so that we really don't know what happened to the younger one. There's still things going on. And I thank everybody before for their prayers and their acknowledge that all kids are valuable and we've got to take care of our kids. And that's part of life, I know, but they're precious and they're our futures. And I love them dearly. So thank you.
Anyone else? Well, at this time, I believe we're ready to go into closed session pursuant to KRS 61810.
Motion to go into closed session.
1C and J to conduct a character and fitness review and to review the potential actions relating to complaints and reports. The board will also review pending litigation. We have a motion on the floor to go in by Ms. Snell, a second by Captain Rosinski. The motion before the board is to go into closed session. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And the motion passes. We are ready to move into closed session. At this time,
that would
I
be
will need a
Brianna over
motion
here
to go
when,
back into open session.
I make a motion to go back in.
Thank you, Ms. Mayfield. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Snell. The motion before the board is to go back into open session. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And we are back in open session. At this time, we will vote on those items discussed during the closed session. Character and fitness. 1 through 6, approve. 7, deny. 8, 9, and 10, approve. 11, deny. 12 through 15, approve. 16 through 21, approve. 22, approve. Conditional approval. 23 and 24, approve. Character and fitness, or CA4, online character and fitness. 1, approve. 2, deny. 3, approve. 4, deny. 5 through 17, approve. For agreed orders, 1 through 29, accept. For findings of fact, conclusions of law, and recommended orders and appeal rights, for 1, accept on findings of facts, conclusions of law, and recommended orders. For 2, modify findings of facts to reflect the record. Modify conclusions of law to find all counts in administrative charges and address the regulatory factors. Modify recommended orders and permanently revoke respondent certificates. For motions to reconsider, for number 1, deny. For educator cases, number 1, attorney review. For 2 through 4, defer for training, classroom management training. 5, attorney review. 6, 7, and 8, number 6, defer for training, classroom management training. 7 and 8, defer for training, de-escalation training. Number 9 and 10, attorney review. 11, dismiss without prejudice. 12 through 17, attorney review. 18, admonish. 19, dismiss with prejudice. 20, defer for training, classroom management training. 21, attorney review. 22, dismiss with prejudice. 23, 24, 25, attorney review. 26, defer for training, educator ethics training. 27 through 31, attorney review. 32 through 34, admonish. 35, attorney review. 36, dismiss with prejudice. 37 and 38, admonish. 39 and 40, attorney review. 41, admonish. 42, attorney review. 43, defer for training, KHSAA training or AA training. 44 through 47, attorney review. 48 through 50, dismiss with prejudice. 51, defer for training, confidentiality training. 52, admonish. 53 and 54, dismiss with prejudice. 55 through 62, refer to hearing. 63, 64 and 65, dismiss with prejudice. 66, no further action. And 67, dismiss with prejudice. At this time, we will go around and vote on those decisions made in closed session, starting with Captain Rosinski.
Lisa Rosinski, yes, agree to all.
Meredith Pittman, agree to all.
Priscilla Keller, agree to all.
Jacqueline Mayfield, agree to all.
CJ Fryer, agree to all.
Amanda Ellis, agree to all.
Amy Lingo, agree to all.
Diane Berry, agree to all.
Kathy Gunn, agree to all.
Amber Snell, agree to all, recuse on recommended order 2.
Justin Mitchell, agree to all, recuse on agreed orders 28, and recuse on educator case number 9. All right. And at this time, I believe we need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right. And
I'll second.
Is there a second? The motion before the board is the motion to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. And we are now adjourned.